Chapter 1537. Kill all the gods. As soon as this thought appeared, Gu Shan completely relaxed. Since he had decided to do this, there was no need to consider other strategies. He only needed to continue thinking about this point. Of course, there were still many problems. For example, what kind of organization was the Pantheon? Why do you want to come into being at the end of the world? Who was inside Reneedle's body? How could he kill her so that the three great laws wouldn't repeat themselves? Gu Shan put down the bottle and leaned against a tree to rest. Problems were just problems. They could be solved step by step. It was time to start gathering information. Gu Shan's gaze fell on the line of glowing text in the air. 2 minutes and 1 second left. The apocalypse is coming. Doomsday is coming. Gu Shan suddenly communicated telepathically with Shroud. Shroud, don't look at me. I'll quietly ask you, are you currently the Lord of Radiance? Sure enough, Shroud didn't look over and simply replied, you could say that, but my abilities are very limited. I can't do much as an overlord. Can you sign a contract with mortals? Gu Shan asked. I can, but I'm still very weak right now. I don't know who would be willing to form a covenant with me. Shroud smiled bitterly. It's because you're still weak that you need someone to help you. I think Epta is a good candidate, Gu Shan said. Epta? Shroud asked. Yes, radiance and healing are also deeply connected. If she signs a contract with you, she will be able to increase the effects of her healing skills. If we were to encounter a battle, she will be a form of insurance for us. Gu Shan continued. Besides, the Overlord of Radiance only had you as his contractor in the past. Now that you've become the Overlord of Radiance, if you can get all the experts in the world to sign a contract with you. Gu Shan didn't continue. Shroud pondered. It's worth a try, yes, but if someone asks, don't tell them it was my suggestion, Gu Shan said. Why? Because it would make it seem like I'm paying special attention to Epta, which would cause misunderstandings. Oh, that's true. Now I think you like her a little. Well, I'll say it was my own idea. Gu Shan didn't continue. There was less than a minute left. He walked behind a large tree and found Scarlet. Scarlet was crouching on the ground, wiping her tears. Gu Shan squatted in front of her and said with a smile, Why? Scared by Atli's words? Scarlet shook her head. Then why are you crying? Gu Shan asked again. I'm now the messenger of the law of death in the mortal realm. I'm afraid that one day I'll accidentally kill those innocent people, Scarlet replied dejectedly. Their families would definitely be in great pain, and I would also blame myself for this. Gu Shan was startled, and her eyes gradually became gentle. Scarlet, when it's time to kill someone, follow me and kill them. It won't go wrong, Gu Shan said. You promise? Scarlet doubtfully asked. I promise, Gu Shan replied. But what right do you have to decide who should die? Scarlet stared straight into his eyes and asked. I naturally don't have the right to decide anyone's life or death, but I have a lot of experience, so I can tell who's human and who's a ghost in human skin, Gu Shan replied. So you're going to kill ghosts? Scarlet asked. That's right, Gu Shan didn't avoid Scarlet's gaze and looked straight into her eyes. When I act, the ghost will die. You can follow me and kill them together. Does that mean we're both worshipping the Overlord of Death? It does. Scarlet tilted her head in thought, then said, All right, I'll follow you from now on. That sounded a bit ambiguous. So she added with a flushed face. Kill them together. Gu Shan nodded. Lines of glowing text quickly appeared in the void of space. Frowny face 3. 1. The apocalypse has arrived. Please prepare yourselves at the same time. The entire world noticed. Mountains, grasslands, deserts, wilderness, cities, villages, countries, even the world of laws, the insects, birds, beasts, humans, even the various sentient life forms, as well as the law behemoths, all noticed the phenomenon in the sky. What's that? Shroud loudly called out. The sky abruptly turned dark as countless stars manifested in the sky. These stars gave off a blinding cold light. Soon after, dark blue lines appeared and connected the tens of thousands of stars, forming a boundless net. A blank, emotionless voice resounded in everyone's mind. Frowny face, everyone. The legendary game has finally been smuggled in and has arrived in front of you. Welcome to the apocalypse, Simon. To celebrate the advent of the apocalypse, the first round of the game will now begin. Starting from a certain person, each of you must describe the connection between yourself and all things or living beings, which will be verified by the game. The first round is about to begin. You will need to prove that you have at least 2 connections with each other, no duplicates, those who can do it. Congratulations on winning the right to prolong your feeble existence. If someone can't even prove 3 connections, then they will be finished. The game begin. Starlight erupted, shining as bright as day, illuminating all living beings and all things. Everyone was dumbfounded. Following that, everyone felt a sense of fear that originated from the depths of their souls. This fear had even surpassed the fear of death, suffocating everyone and instinctively trying to grasp onto any chance of survival. And so, those with quick reflexes quickly recalled what the voice had said before. For example, Gu Qing-shan. After all, he had seen many apocalypses, so he immediately said, "Be it now or in the future, Shroud and I will always be good brothers." A dark blue string manifested out of nowhere, connecting him and Shroud. "Hurry," Gu Qing-shan urged him. Shroud immediately said, "I'm a disciple of the same generation as Scarlet." A blue string manifested, connecting him and Scarlet. Scarlet had already noticed this and said, "I'm also a disciple of the same generation as Epta." The 2 of them were connected by the string. Epta looked at the 3 of them, so she naturally understood. She hurriedly turned around and told Atli, "I'm also a disciple of the same generation as Atli." A few moments later, the blue string didn't manifest. The connection couldn't be established. Shroud exclaimed in shock, "Impossible. Why is that?" Atli's expression also changed greatly. He looked at Shroud, then at Gu Qing-shan, then at Scarlet with an expression of despair. Suddenly, he loudly declared, "I'm friends with Road." The blue string still didn't manifest. A split second later, their surroundings abruptly turned dark. All of a sudden, 2 red figures appeared out of nowhere, enveloping Epta and Atli. Epta froze, but before she could say a single word, her entire body had already melted into the red light. Atli abruptly unleashed boundless blue light and angrily shouted, "No, I'm the controller of wind. I'm the deity of wind. How could I be?" The red light became increasingly thick, almost like blood. Atli's flesh and blood melted into the light, followed by his skeleton. Even though he was only a skeleton, he was still madly struggling to resist this red light. But it was useless. 1 breath's worth of time later, both his body and soul no longer existed. Gu Qing-shan, Shroud, and Scarlet were all stunned. A cold and emotionless voice resounded in their ears. Frowny face, 2 living beings have been terminated. The game shall continue. Please complete the second connection within 10 seconds. Otherwise, you'll be terminated. Gu Qing-shan abruptly slapped her own face to force herself to calm down. Atli had already changed his soul, so he naturally wasn't satisfied with Epta's connection. That's why both of them died. Gu Qing-shan quickly explained, "The law of death that I wield and the law of radiance that Shroud wields both belong to the most unique category. We're professionists of the same level." The second blue string manifested, connecting him to Shroud. Shroud turned to Scarlet, then thought of something and loudly declared, "The law of radiance that I wield and the law of death that Scarlet wields both belong to the most unique category. We are professionists of the same level." The second blue string manifested, connecting him to Scarlet. The cold voice resounded again. "The game is over. You've completed the simplest introductory challenge. Please continue to live. You may live for another 12 hours. After saying so, the voice disappeared. Only the 3 of them remained in the wilderness. A few moments later, Scarlet fell to the ground, silently crying. "Epta," she called out. There was no response. Chapter 1538. A line of glowing text appeared in front of Gu Qing-shan's eyes. Frowny face, your remaining time to live, 11:57, 11:56, 11:55. Gu Qing-shan's gaze moved towards Scarlet. Scarlet was still grieving for Epta. Shroud stood on one side, completely stunned, unable to react to what just happened. He directly wiped them out. Why would she have such power? He muttered to himself, then abruptly jumped up and loudly shouted, "Oh no! Renedal is alone outside." Scarlet also abruptly stood up and hurriedly said, "We need to hurry and find her." Gu Qingshan looked at the two of them. They didn't know about Renedal's true situation, so they still considered her to be their companion. In truth, it was indeed time for them to check on her situation. After all, she was alone outside, unable to establish contact with anyone, so it was very likely that she had already been erased by the apocalypse, Simon. But even now, time still hadn't returned. If Renedal had died, why haven't the three great laws of reality reappeared? Could it be because of the apocalypse? Indeed, we need to confirm her situation right away, Gu Qingshan said with a stern expression. Suddenly, a voice resounded. "I'm glad that you thought of me right away." Renedal appeared in front of the three of them with a smile. She had returned. However, a white-haired old man was standing next to her. Shroud's expression changed, then exclaimed in shock together with Scarlet, "The Guardian Elder?" Gu Qingshan was surprised for a split second, then immediately followed up, "Grand Elder, you're still alive." The Guardian Elder, who was also the Grand Elder, had been missing for a very long time. The previous Renedal had used his corpse to block Gu Qingshan's attack in order to buy herself a chance to escape. Gu Qingshan had examined the corpse and even found a recording of Renedal's image on it. This elder was indeed dead, but he came back to life. The Great Elder looked at the three youths and said with a smile, "I've been looking for you for a long time. Just now, I just happened to feel Renedal's aura and finally found your whereabouts." "It's great that you're still alive," Scarlet said. "Yeah, as long as you're here. We're not afraid of anything." Gu Qingshan added, "It was full of loopholes. The law behemoth had clearly sealed space, but Renedal said that she could hide in another space without being discovered. If she was really hiding in a different space, how did the Great Elder find her? Besides, this person was really dead." Gu Qingshan glanced at Renedal. Above her head, there were actually three faint stars. With the first star, she devoured the law behemoth of wind, allowing Atli to complete the soul swap. Which two law behemoths did she devour with these two extra starlight particles? In any case, one of them must have been used up. She used the Great Elder's corpse to lure another soul of the Pantheon here and attached it to the corpse. Gu Qingshan noticed that. Perhaps it was because of the advent of Apocalypse, Simon, that she had no choice but to use the Great Elder's corpse to place the soul of a certain deity into it. Without this resurrected person, Renedal wouldn't have been able to establish a connection with another person twice. She would have died in the apocalypse. Gu Qingshan instantly understood the crux of the matter. He turned to Renedal. "This woman is truly impressive. She managed to escape from Simon." The Great Elder was still talking. "I've been cultivating in seclusion, but as soon as I heard that the World Valley was destroyed, my heart broke," he sighed, and pretended to say, "It's good that a disciple managed to survive. From now on, I will not leave you again. I will ensure your safety." Gu Qingshan sighed emotionally. "It's great that you're here. We won't have to worry about anything anymore." Both Shroud and Scarlet sighed in relief. They were truly sighing in relief. Renedal looked at everyone's expressions. Her lips twitched a bit, but she didn't say anything. Atli and Epta weren't here. The result was clear. There was no need to confirm it again. Since the apocalypse had arrived, a lot of things had to be done quickly. She glanced at the Great Elder. The Great Elder's expression changed a bit, then turned to the young people and asked, "While I wasn't here, did you grow any stronger?" "Yes, I can now control the power of the Law of Radiance," Shroud replied. Scarlet replied, "I can control the power of the Law of Death. The same goes for Road." The Great Elder's expression remained calm as he continued. "Renedal has already told me about your current situation. The Law Behemoths will send people to find you at any moment. So, I need to first understand your current strength in order to help you improve a bit faster." The three of them exchanged glances. The Great Elder continued, "No need to worry. My strength is more than enough to deal with you. So use your strongest attacks against me. All right, I'll go first. Shroud stepped forward and casually flipped through the book of prophesied destinies. Several dozen spears of light manifested out of nowhere and shot towards the Great Elder. Not bad, the Great Elder praised. He lightly flicked his hand against the spears of light. Instantly, layers of frost manifested out of nowhere and froze the spears of light inside. Unable to move, the spears of light were quickly extinguished. Shroud, stand down. Scarlet, you go, the Great Elder said. Scarlet casually summoned the black scythe, rushed forward, and slashed at the Great Elder's neck. Black flames filled the air. Bam! A dull thud. Scarlet was sent flying, rolled twice on the ground, then stood back up in a sorry state. The Great Elder couldn't tell what he was thinking and only casually said, "His strength is decent." Next rode, Gu Qing Shan opened his palm. A cluster of black flames manifested in his hand. Since this guy from the Pantheon was borrowing the Great Elder's identity, he would naturally be able to unleash his original power without any qualms. After all, the Great Elder was also very powerful. The current Shroud and Scarlet were both too young to be able to tell just how powerful the soul underneath the Great Elder's body was. Then let me give it a try. Gu Qing Shan leapt forward and tossed the cluster of black flames in his hand towards the Great Elder. A stray flame instantly traversed a long distance and directly collided with the frost shield in front of the Great Elder. Boom! The flames rose to the sky. Within the intense black flames, the frost around the Great Elder's body began to melt. He clasped his hands behind his back and praised, "Road's power of death is already quite powerful, much more powerful than Scarlet. You flatter me, Great Elder." Gu Qing Shan appeared embarrassed. The Great Elder's gaze moved through the three of them and commented, "Shroud is the only inheritor of the Law of Radiance. His talents are limitless, and he will sooner or later become one of the strongest combatants in this world. Road's power of death is compatible with his own characteristics, so it's possible for him to become a true god of death in the future. As for Scarlet, Reneedle has told me about your situation." The Great Elder opened his palm. A cluster of flames manifested in his hand. "You aren't suited for the Law of Death. I have a covenant of the Law of Flame here. How about you sign it and become the envoy of flame from now on?" The Great Elder added, "Scarlet, your thoughts are pure, and you don't have any killing intent. Pure flames are more suited for you. Once you accept this covenant of flame, you will improve even faster than Road." Hearing the Great Elder's words, Scarlet appeared hesitant. Gu Qing Shan's heart sank to the bottom. He finally understood what the other party was planning. Reneedle had 3 stars on her, 2 of which were used by Atli and the Great Elder. Only 1 star remained. The Great Elder wants Scarlet to complete the soul swap and become one of them. Boundless killing intent erupted in Gu Qing Shan's mind. Not yet. The apocalypse is right before us. I still don't know the situation of the Pantheon. If I act rashly, I'll only allow the enemy to resurrect again. If Reneedle resurrected again, she would know that there's something wrong with Road. She would know an apocalypse. Siming would erupt and know how to avoid it. The Pantheon would obtain clearer and clearer information. They would be able to advance further in this chaotic situation. Gu Qing Shan closed his eyes, then opened them again. "Grand Elder," he smiled, "Scarlet and I cultivate the power of death together, so we've been able to communicate with each other and improve quite quickly." The Great Elder shook his head. "Road, the power of death is a bloodthirsty power. Anyone who accepts it would fall into an endless cycle of slaughter. It's not suitable for a girl." Scarlet looked at Gu Qing Shan, then at the Great Elder, but didn't say anything for now. Seeing that, Reneedle smiled. "Scarlet, after you accept the Law of Flame, you won't need to drink anymore, and you'll be able to quickly grow stronger under the Great Elder's guidance. Isn't that great?" Scarlet silently nodded. "It is indeed great," she said. The Great Elder happily nodded and said, "Then come, receive the covenant of flame from me." Gu Qing Shan's killing intent surged. Although he's a wise and intelligent person, in the end, he's still a sword cultivator. At such a close distance, if he suddenly decided to kill someone, no one would be able to stop him in a hurry. "I don't care who you are whether or not you can be revived. I want you dead right now." Gu Shan's hand slightly opened, almost about to grab the Six Paths' great mountain sword from the void of space. At this point, Scarlet turned to him and asked, "Road, do you really think it's better for me to use the power of death?" Before Gu Shan could answer, the Great Elder had already shook his head and sighed. Road is also a newbie when it comes to using the power of laws. In truth, both of you need my guidance. Scarlet ignored him and simply stared at Gu Shan. The Great Elder also stared back at her. Gu Shan held back her killing intent and smiled warmly. "I'm also a newbie, so I don't know much about the power of laws, but I feel that it's better for you to use the power of death. Tiske, a black scythe. How cool." Scarlet instantly smiled. She bowed to the Great Elder and said, "Grand Elder, I'm sorry. The law of flame is good, but I've already prepared myself to always use the law of death." The Great Elder scoffed. "You're a girl. The law of death will make you kill a lot of people." Renedal also scowled. "Accepting the law of death will cause you to receive the curse of death. You will fall into the eternal fate of killing and being killed." Scarlet smiled and looked at Renedal. "It can't be helped. I promised Road." "What did you promise him?" Renedal appeared doubtful. Scarlet replied, "I promised Road that I would follow him." The Great Elder shook his head. "You kids are just joking around. No need to take it so seriously." "No, I never go back on my promises," Scarlet firmly replied. Chapter 1539. The Grand Elder was a bit troubled. He didn't expect this to happen, and neither did Renedal. Although Scarlet was only a disciple, once she had decided on something, no one could change her mind. Shroud stepped forward, shielding Scarlet and rode behind him, then smiled. "Grand Elder, you don't really understand. Sometimes, other than cultivation, young people have other choices." The Grand Elder smiled. "It's fine. It's only a small matter. Shroud can't let anything happen to him. Road is also the best choice for the law of death. These two people can't be touched." Renedal immediately changed her tone and smiled. "I really couldn't tell, but Road, you're quite capable. It's just that she's really suited to use that scythe." Gu Shan answered honestly, feeling a bit prideful. "I gave her a scythe, but you didn't give her anything at all, and you still want to move her? If Scarlet doesn't take the bait, you can't touch her." Gu Shan dispelled her killing intent and respectfully said, "Grand Elder, I've always respected you, and we understand your efforts, but there are some things that can't be forced. Are you hungry? I'll make you a bowl of noodles." While the Grand Elder was listening, he suddenly heard the word noodles. His throat moved a bit. Then he asked, "You know how to make noodles?" "Indeed. You've come from afar, so you must have the ingredients." "You provide the ingredients. I'll cook it. I guarantee that you'll be satisfied," Gu Shan replied. The Grand Elder paused, then couldn't help but touch his body. "Really, there really isn't anything good on this corpse. But it's been a long time since I've heard of eating, so how could I miss this chance?" The Grand Elder tossed everything that happened just now to the back of his mind and said, "I'll go get some ingredients." After saying so, he disappeared. Renedal shook her head with a rare, helpless expression. She could understand this, but she couldn't reprimand him. So she could only turn a blind eye to it. "What do you think about the apocalypse just now?" Renedal asked. "It was extremely dangerous," Scarlet replied. "This is only the beginning. If that Simon wants us to reveal even more about the relationship between us, we'll be in trouble," Shroud said. Gu Shan was about to speak when lines of glowing text flashed before her eyes. The glowing text flickered and suddenly turned blood red. Gu Shan immediately became serious. The war god UI very rarely changed the color of its text, unless it was to alert him. Lines of blood red text prompted, "Attention! Attention! Your time to survive is rapidly decreasing. Apocalypse. Simon has deceived this world and is currently deceiving this world. In 27 minutes, the apocalypse will descend again. Compared to last time, this time, it will request a layer of connection between living beings. Don't ask me how I know. I deducted 200,000 soul points from you. Be very careful." Gu Shan shuddered. He clearly said 12 hours, but in the end, it became more than 20 minutes. This apocalypse actually knew how to lie. However, if one thought about it carefully, one would realize that its goal was to end all living beings. What's the point of lying? A line of numbers appeared in the void of space in front of Gu Qingshan's eyes. 00:26:59, 00:26:58, 00:26:57. What now? Gu Qingshan's thoughts quickly turned, but she still spoke slowly and calmly. Shroud, you're absolutely right. We should establish more connections as soon as possible, just in case Simon comes again, Gu Qingshan said. Shroud nodded. Reneedle thought for a bit, then agreed that this was an urgent matter. But how do we establish connections? Scarlet doubtfully asked. Gu Qingshan replied. The connection between people is also known as relationship. It's a form of communication and interaction, as well as a manifestation of one's identity. But how many connections are there between people? Scarlet asked. Shroud began to count. Schoolmates, friends, brothers, other than that, what else? Reneedle pondered. Parents and children are also a type, and lovers, companions, husband and wife, Scarlet added. Gu Qingshan continued. The line between friends and brothers is too blurry. They might be mistaken for the same type of connection. From a broader perspective, lovers, companions, husband and wife are all a type of relationship, Reneedle added. Why do we have to look at it from a broader perspective? Scarlet asked in confusion. Because Simon's goal is to end everything. You can't rely on it to give us any loopholes, Shroud replied. Reneedle and Gu Qingshan both nodded. That was indeed the case. Against such an unknown entity, we must discard our fantasies and eliminate all possibilities of being framed. We don't actually have a lot of connections between us, so it's not easy, Reneedle scowled. Everyone also went silent. They were schoolmates, so they could also be considered friends. But what else? There were no other connections. Shroud turned to Reneedle and asked, How about you become my girlfriend? Of course. Reneedle smiled. Scarlet pondered. This way, there would be 3 types of connections between the two of you, namely as fellow disciples of the World Valley, companions, and friends, Gu Qingshan replied. No, I'm guessing that companions and friends can't coexist because from a male and female perspective, they are either companions or friends, and Simon would definitely make that clear. That's right, Shroud, and I should have 2 types of connections. Reneedle confirmed. Gu Qingshan thought for a bit, then said, For example, if I were to teach you how to cook from now on, you would all become my culinary disciples, while I would be your culinary teacher. Is that what you call a connection? Scarlet asked. Indeed, we would establish a master-disciple relationship. One of us would teach, the other would learn. So it would naturally be considered a connection, Gu Qingshan replied. Shroud, Reneedle, and Scarlet exchanged glances. We're friends. It wouldn't be a good idea to become master and disciple right now, would it? Shroud hesitantly asked. But it shouldn't matter how well I learn, right? Scarlet was still a bit worried. No, I'll seriously teach you. And you also have to seriously learn. Don't think that you'll be able to bluff your way through in front of Simon, Gu Qingshan replied. So troublesome? Can't we change to something else? Scarlet asked. Gu Qingshan glanced at the war god UI. There were 25 minutes left before Simon would descend again. He shrugged. How about you come up with something else? As long as you have any good life skills, specialties, or talents, I don't mind learning from you. The 3 of them fell silent. Other than becoming stronger and fighting, what else can I do? This was a question that would make one recognize oneself. After a while of silence, Reneedle said, If we can really establish a connection this way, then I don't mind becoming your disciple. But it's only limited to learning how to cook. I won't teach you anything else even if you want to, Gu Qingshan replied. I'm fine with that, Shroud replied. Me too, Scarlet added. All right, let me teach you the first lesson about cooking, Gu Qingshan said. The 3 of them listened. Gu Qingshan took out a cleaver and showed it to the 3 of them. Pay attention. This is a cleaver for cutting vegetables. Feel it for yourself. The cleaver was passed back and forth between the 3 of them. What's going on with cutting vegetables? Scarlet asked. Gu Qingshan randomly chopped a tree branch, then gave the cleaver to Reneedle and said, You cut it. Follow the pattern of the tree. Make sure that the size of each cut is about the same. That's very simple, Reneedle said as she held the cleaver. She seriously began to cut the tree branch. Gu Qingshan, Shroud, and Scarlet watched from one side. This was the scene that the Great Elder saw when he returned. He rubbed his eyes, thinking that he was seeing things. She's using a cleaver to cut a tree branch? What are you doing? The Grand Elder asked. Gu Shan casually replied, establishing a connection. We're here to see what kind of ingredients the Grand Elder brought back so that we can demonstrate it in person. When it came to ingredients, the Grand Elder didn't ask any further and took out a few random rations. After all, there were still 11 hours before Simon would descend. The most important thing right now was to eat a delicious meal. A group of pixies were migrating, so I took some of their rations, the Grand Elder said. Gu Shan glanced at them, then rolled up his sleeves and began to shape these rations into long strips. I'm going to demonstrate how to make noodle soup, he told the three of them. Would it be better if these rations were stir-fried? Scarlet asked. Pretty much, but I'm an expert at making noodles, Gu Shan replied. Don't be ridiculous. I have a lot of questions to ask this Grand Elder, so I'm definitely going to make him a bowl of noodles. Gu Shan's cooking went without saying. A bowl of noodle soup was quickly devoured by the Grand Elder. Delicious. It's so delicious. The Grand Elder was still holding the bowl, unwilling to put it down. Gu Shan turned around and told Scarlet, quickly recognize Shroud as your older brother. This is another connection. That's right. Why didn't I think of that? Scarlet turned to Shroud. All right, from now on, we're siblings, and I do want to have a younger sister, Shroud grinned. Scarlet called out, Big brother, Younger sister, Shroud replied. Gu Shan turned to Reneedle and said, I'm older than you. Reneedle turned away and asked Scarlet, Can I also recognize you as my younger sister? Sure. Scarlet glanced at Gu Shan and smiled. Gu Shan appeared helpless. His gaze moved toward the time on the War God UI. Scarlet, Shroud, and Reneedle now had 3 connections. 5 minutes left. Gu Shan's heart suddenly jumped. In such a short amount of time, would I be able to achieve all of this? He simulated it in his mind. Suddenly, the Grand Elder asked, What kind of connection did you establish with Road? A master-disciple relationship in cooking, Reneedle replied. The Grand Elder looked at Gu Shan and praised. That's a good connection. Gu Shan followed up. Grand Elder, how about I learn some battle techniques from you? That way we can also establish a master-disciple relationship. The Grand Elder thought about it and agreed. Simon is too terrifying. I really need to prepare more connections. He stood up and asked, What do you want to learn? How to increase the power of a spell, Gu Shan replied. The Grand Elder thought briefly, then said, This place isn't convenient. Let's find a more open place to unleash a more powerful spell. All right, Gu Shan replied. For minutes left. The Grand Elder told the others, You can rest here. We'll return shortly. Let's think about it and see if there are any other new connections, Reneedle said. The Grand Elder nodded, then brought Gu Shan into the wilderness. 3 minutes later, they stopped in the middle of a desolate, barren wilderness. That's enough. Releasing powerful offensive techniques here won't harm bystanders by accident, the Great Elder said. Gu Shan looked at him and suddenly asked, The wind god took over Atli's body, but was killed by the apocalypse. Can he revive? See you again. Activate. The Grand Elder blanked out for a bit, then replied, Only Reneedle can revive. We're powerful enough to not be killed, but if there's really something that can kill us, we'll cease to exist at the very next moment. The Grand Elder regained his senses, completely oblivious to what just happened, and said, Road, I need to discuss something with you. What discussion? Gu Shan asked. If you're willing to convince Scarlet to accept the Covenant of Flames, I'll teach you the most advanced destructive spells, the Grand Elder said with a grim expression. What if I don't? Gu Shan asked. The Grand Elder shook his head. Then I can only teach you the most basic of things. This is for the sake of establishing a connection. 5 seconds left. Gu Shan sighed and said, No need, time's up. In the sky, countless stars once again erupted in blinding light. Chapter 1540. In the sky, tens of thousands of stars were constantly moving, giving off blinding light. A cold and blank voice resounded. Everyone, there are a total of 11 hours until the official start of the game. But you must understand, the official Simon game is extremely difficult. It could bring about your end at any moment. In consideration of this dangerous situation, We shall now begin the warm-up game. The rules of the warm-up game are as follows. Every entity, regardless of who you are, must describe the connection between yourself and all things or living beings as verified by. The game, you must prove that you have at least 3 types of connections with each other. No duplicates. Those who can do it, congratulations on winning the right to live on. If someone can't even prove 3 types of connections, that means they are not qualified to participate in the official game. This shall be ended. Very well, the game begins. The Grand Elder's expression warped. 3 types of connections. Oh no, why did it start early, Renedal? He hurriedly shouted. Gu Qingshan looked at him and muttered. She won't be coming, why not? The Grand Elder shouted. Because she has established at least 3 types of connections with Shroud and Scarlet, so she can peacefully survive. Furthermore, even if she does come, would you dare to expose the connection between you in front of me? I have a covenant with the Overlord of Death, so when I die, he would at least be able to help me pass on a message or something. Gu Qingshan pondered for a bit. The Grand Elder's expression warped. Furthermore, Gu Qingshan shrugged. Simon has already deceived everyone. Who knows what it will do next? What if Shroud dies as soon as she leaves? Gu Qingshan smiled, but the Grand Elder felt a chill in his heart. At such a dangerous moment, it would be best for her to protect herself and take care of Shroud. While they were talking, 2 blood-colored figures silently appeared and hovered above their heads. Road, this is for the sake of saving lives. Hurry, accept me as your teacher. The Grand Elder Boss shouted. Gu Qingshan shook her head and ignored him. Suddenly, a person appeared in front of him. It wasn't accurate to call it a person. In fact, it was just a burning ball of dark flames attached to a black cloak. The Overlord of Death. Above its head, a ball of blood-red light also appeared. So even the overlords were threatened by the apocalypse. Simon. Gu Qingshan quickly said, We are in a contractual relationship. A line of words also appeared in front of the Overlord of Death. I will provide you with power, and you will worship me with the death of all living beings. A dark blue thread appeared, connecting Gu Qingshan and the Overlord of Death. The first connection was established. Gu Qingshan reached into his pocket and tossed a spirit stone to the Overlord of Death, then quickly said, I am your creditor. A line of text immediately appeared in front of the Overlord of Death. I admit that I am your debtor. Another dark blue line appeared and connected the 2 of them. The second connection was established. Gu Qingshan didn't stop for a single breath and continued. Can you be my friend? Another line of text appeared in front of the Overlord of Death. I can. The dark blue line continued to appear, connecting them together. The third connection was perfected. Oh, the ball of light above Gu Qingshan's head disappeared. The ball of light above the Overlord of Death's head also disappeared. Gu Qingshan looked to the side, only to see the other ball of red light becoming thicker and thicker, quickly enveloping the Grand Elder. The Grand Elder opened his mouth and angrily shouted, Road, who exactly are you? Gu Qingshan didn't say anything and only coldly stared at him. The red light became even brighter, like blood and fire. The Great Elder opened his mouth and seemed to be cursing at something, but his voice couldn't be heard anymore. Almost in an instant, his entire body, flesh, bones, and even his soul disappeared along with the scarlet light. He was finished. Gu Qingshan and the Overlord of Death silently watched this. A line of burning black text appeared in front of Gu Qingshan. Road, it was fortunate that I had you. Gu Qingshan shook her head. Without you, I would have ended up the same way. We were both trying to save ourselves, he then curiously asked. Were you also affected by Simon? The line of burning text changed to form a new line of text frowny face indeed. During the previous 2 connections, we were able to pass because we had a double connection with the world origin, but now that the laws have been changed to 3 connections, we can no longer pass. Several overlords have already been killed. Look up. Gu Qingshan looked up, only to see countless sprites of light on Fei Li's land flying towards the stars in the sky. So powerful! This must be the world origin power contained within the law behemoths. Gu Qingshan muttered. Quite a few law behemoths had died just now. so their world origin power was being absorbed by Simon. Tens of thousands of stars in the sky were strengthened by the world origin power, becoming brighter and brighter, illuminating the entire world as if it was noon. Apocalypse, Simon, was growing stronger. It would continue to grow stronger, and there was nothing in this world that could resist its power. Not even the law behemoths. Renedal came from the Pantheon and managed to avoid the destruction of the previous era. But she had no choice but to learn cooking from me, all for the sake of surviving under Simon, his influence. The sense of danger in Gu Qingshan's heart was growing stronger and stronger. This definitely wasn't a SEAL-class apocalypse, nor an unsolvable apocalypse. It was at least a true unlivable apocalypse. Unlivable. No survivors. Gu Qingshan took a deep breath and tried to calm herself down. Suddenly, a person appeared behind him. Renedal. Renedal looked around and understood the situation. The Grand Elder, she said. He was killed by the apocalypse. Gu Qingshan suddenly knelt down on one knee and punched the ground. Boom! A deep pit burning with raging flames appeared. How detestable! It killed the Grand Elder. I couldn't do anything about it. Gu Qingshan roared in grief and indignation. Renedal looked at the Overlord of Death and muttered, Road, were you saved by the Overlord of Death? Yes, Gu Qingshan replied dejectedly. He established a few more connections with me and helped me survive, but the Grand Elder, he couldn't continue. Seeing that, Renedal also felt a bit of lingering fear. Among the myriad deities, my connection with the water god isn't actually that close, and I don't normally interact with them. On the other hand, it was because I established a few concrete connections with Shroud, Road, and Scarlet that I managed to avoid this Simon calamity. The situation is becoming more and more serious. I need to gather more people to the realm of life. Renedal silently thought. At this point, Shroud and Scarlet also arrived. After learning about what happened just now, they also sighed. This apocalypse was truly too powerful. It was truly despairing. What should we do now? Scarlet asked. Go somewhere with more people, Renedal replied. But the law behemoths are still looking for us, Shroud said. Renedal coldly chuckled. A large number of them have already died. The rest can't even protect themselves. So how would they be in a mood to look for you? All right, then we'll go somewhere with more people. That way we'll be able to establish more connections, Shroud agreed. Gu Qingshan hadn't said anything up to this point, but he followed up. This apocalypse is too terrifying. We can't hesitate any longer. We need to hurry to somewhere with more people. He then turned to Renedal. I know you're thin-skinned, but now isn't the time to be bashful. I'm older than you. You're younger than me. Let's become brother and sister. Renedal was a bit surprised. Gu Qingshan patted Shroud's back and said, Try to convince her this isn't something to joke about. Shroud then walked forward and held Renedal's hand. Road is our best friend, so you should just treat him as your younger sister. Each more connection we have, the more hope we'll have for survival. Renedal thought about it and agreed. The wind god is already dead. Water god is also dead. I didn't even have time to devour the law behemoths before they were harvested by the apocalypse. The situation is truly terrible. We need to protect ourselves first, then consider other matters. Renedal looked at Road, her lips twitching, but couldn't say anything. All of a sudden, all the stars in the sky dimmed down. The cold, emotionless voice once again resounded across the entire world. Congratulations, you have passed the warm-up test. You may safely pass the remaining 11 hours and wait for the game to officially begin, however. In the remaining 11 hours, there might be other surprises waiting for you, everyone. Please stay tuned. The voice slowly faded. The world became dark. What will happen next? No one knew. Gu Qingshan looked at Renedal and urged, Hurry! Everything is for the sake of survival. This time, Renedal no longer hesitated and called out, Bro, little sister, Gu Qingshan replied. Chapter 1541. The four of them didn't stay put, instead choosing a direction and began their long journey. The sky remained dark. Occasionally, starlight would appear, but it would quickly fade back into the darkness. As time passed, the sun never appeared again. The wilderness was filled with darkness, coldness, and loneliness. There were no signs of life. All the insects and animals in the wilderness had died in the apocalypse. From the deities of the pantheon, the law behemoths, down to a fish and an ant, Simon didn't spare a single creature. A strange feeling enveloped everyone. Everyone slowly realized just how terrifying this apocalypse was. At this rate, the entire natural world would quickly collapse without any means of resistance. Species would go extinct. Everything would be irreparable. 6 hours later, Guqin Shan, Shroud, Reneedle, and Scarlet found a place with no wind and started a campfire. The continuous journey had made them a bit tired. According to the normal time, it should be nighttime now, so they decided to rest for the night. "How far are we from the nearest human settlement?" Shroud asked. "Around 3,730 miles. The law behemoth's spatial ceiling barrier is still functioning normally, so you won't be able to fly," Reneedle replied. "I wonder what the situation is like there. If anyone is still working for the law behemoth," Shroud worriedly said. "Indeed, anything can happen in the apocalypse. We need to ensure that we have enough stamina to deal with any situation," Scarlet replied. "Road, do we still have anything to eat tonight?" Shroud asked. "There are no fish in the river, no beasts on the shore, and no wild fruits nearby. I'm guessing that we won't be able to find anything edible before we reach the human settlement," Guqin Shan replied. He took out the rest of the liquor, took a look, and gave each of them a bottle. "This liquor isn't particularly strong. It should be able to replenish our energy and water. Let's rest after we're done." The four of them opened the bottles at the same time. Scarlet held the bottle and muttered blankly. "This is the liquor that Epta left behind." The campfire illuminated the group. No one said anything. Epta was dead. Atli was dead. The Grand Elder was dead. "There's no need to feel sad. We don't know how much longer we'll be able to live anyway," Shroud said. "Are you discouraged?" Reneedle looked at him. "No." Shroud smirked, then casually replied. "Perhaps our destination is the same as Epta's, so there's no need to be sad. Right now, we should take Epta's portion with us, continue to live on, and see what fate has in store." Guqin Shan raised the bottle and said, "If we can survive until the very end." Shroud also raised his bottle and said, "We're going to get rid of this apocalypse." Clang. The two bottles clinked together. They craned their necks and gulped it down. Reneedle narrowed her eyes and looked at the two of them. Scarlet couldn't keep calm and hurriedly asked, "From the looks of it, you've already thought of a way to fight against the apocalypse?" "No." Guqin Shan and Shroud spoke at the same time. Scarlet was speechless. "It's not good to be too tense. It's good to let your body and mind relax." Reneedle nodded slightly. Scarlet also raised the bottle and took a sip. This liquor was brewed from fruits, so it was very light to begin with, almost the same as fruit juice, which could be considered as replenishing some energy for the body. 10 minutes later, everyone finished their bottles. "Let's rest," Guqin Shan said. "You guys rest. I'll keep watch," Reneedle said. "I'll do it. You rest," Shroud said. "No need. I'm using a spatial technique that can ensure that I can sense any commotion within a radius of several dozen miles, while also allowing me to rest," Reneedle replied. She casually waved her hand. Invisible waves spread out and dispersed into the wilderness. "That's not bad at all," Guqin Shan praised. Everyone began to rest. The continuous journey was truly exhausting, so Scarlet fell asleep in just a few moments. Then Shroud. Then Guqin Shan. A few moments later, Reneedle stood up and looked at the three young people. "They're all asleep," she said in a low voice and walked out of the camp, quickly disappearing. A few moments later, an ancient sword appeared from behind Guqin Shan. The Earth Sword asked, "He actually fell asleep?" Another elegant sword appeared from the void of space and spoke. "That can't be right. He's always been a cautious person. Hit him." This was Luo Bingley's voice. "Me? Hit him? No, no, no. That's not appropriate," the Earth Sword replied. Another sword that gave off a cold gleam appeared and happily circled around Guqin Shan. The Earth Sword said, "Choween, get some water and pour it on his head." The sword stopped and lightly waved in front of Guqin Shan's face. A large cluster of sparkling water abruptly appeared and poured onto Guqin Shan's head. Guqin Shan didn't react at all and was still asleep. Shroud and Scarlet were also sleeping soundly. Seems like he's not asleep, Luo Bingley pondered. The Earth Sword called out. Shanu, stab him. An autumn water clear blue sword appeared from thin air and lightly stopped on Gu Qingshan's shoulder. Don't keep stabbing him. Gongzi will get injured every time. I've already learned how to control my strength, Shanu said. While she said that, the sword lightly cut a small wound on Gu Qingshan's shoulder. Divine Mountain Law Breaker. Gu Qingshan abruptly jumped up. He wiped the water off his face, glanced at the 4 swords in front of him, then at Shroud and Scarlet, who were still asleep, and understood. Thank you, Shanu. It's fine. Gongzi, how do you feel? Gu Qingshan looked at the void of space. A line of glowing text was hovering their frowny face. You've been struck by a soul-soothing technique. This technique doesn't contain any damage. It will only cause the user to fall asleep and recover their stamina. Gu Qingshan shook his head. Reneedle has countless tricks up her sleeves, so why did she secretly use a soul-soothing technique? Did you see where Reneedle went? Gu Qingshan asked. No, she directly disappeared, the Earth Sword replied. This Reneedle seems to have both spatial and mental techniques, so if she wanted to leave you, you wouldn't be able to find her, Luo Bingley analyzed. You're right, but the situation has changed, Gu Qingshan said. The situation has changed? Luo Bingley doubtfully asked. Gu Qingshan didn't answer and simply raised his left hand. Where's my sister? He asked. In a split second, a black thread emerged from his wrist and shot into the wilderness, disappearing into the distance. Let's go. Let's see what she's up to, Gu Qingshan said. He used both Orange Sovereign Transformation and Ghostly Shadow of Night thaumaturgies at once to turn into an orange cat. Meow. The orange cat lightly called out, then quickly followed the direction of the black thread into the wilderness. Behind the orange cat, the 4 swords disappeared at the same time. Under the shroud of night, nothing could be seen. The orange cat cautiously maintained Ghostly Shadow of Night, making sure that nothing could detect his existence. After a few minutes, Reneedle was still nowhere to be seen at the end of the wilderness. The orange cat was a bit hesitant. I can't waste any more time. With a single thought, it disappeared from where it was. Shadow shift. Shadow shift. Shadow shift. This was a divine skill that couldn't be affected by any technique. The orange cat flashed again and again, finally arriving at the edge of the wilderness. He saw Reneedle. In front of Reneedle, among the 7 to 8 corpses, 3 of them were slowly standing up. The orange cat slowly walked up to Reneedle and silently crouched down. Where are the wind deity and water deity? One of the corpses asked. They died during the apocalypse, so the laws I granted them returned to me. So I immediately called for you to reincarnate, Reneedle replied. So that's why. Has that event begun? Another corpse asked. He couldn't be called a corpse anymore, because the ashen color of defeat on his face was slowly disappearing. This person had come back to life. There's still no movement, but I'm guessing that it will happen tonight, so I immediately called for you, Reneedle said. You did the right thing. We risked the risk of being ended by the apocalypse to return to the realm of life for this event. If the wind deity and the others died, then they died. This event cannot be allowed to go wrong, the third person solemnly said. Everyone nodded. How many minutes left? The foresight deity? Reneedle asked. Another person replied. In 3 minutes, something will break through the crack of the reality gate. Soon, for a while, including Reneedle, no one said anything else. The orange cat narrowed his eyes, sharply noticing the same emotion on everyone's faces. Fear. These guys from the Pantheon are afraid. What are they afraid of? If they're afraid, why did they brave the apocalypse and return to the realm of life? The orange cat noticed something strange. He no longer crouched down and silently retreated, putting a lot of distance between himself and these people. Chapter 1542. Under the dim shroud of night, the stars were hidden. Reneedle stood in the middle of the group and silently waited for a while. How much longer? She asked. 1 minute left, foresight deity replied. Everyone became tense. What do you think it will be? Another person couldn't help but ask. The third person replied, I don't know, but if it was able to break open the reality gate, then shut up. Reneedle suddenly, sternly scolded him. The third person hurriedly went silent. What's going on? Have you forgotten even the most basic level of caution? Foresight deity asked. My apologies, I forgot. This isn't the dusty world of death, the other person hurriedly apologized. The others then pulled their gazes back. After that, they didn't say anything else and silently waited. The orange cat was hiding in the distance, curiously wagging his tail. What was that person trying to say? When he apologized, he also said that this isn't the dusty world. Thinking about it, the twine of cloud atlas in my hand is related to the dusty world, but the giant corpse said that the twine of cloud atlas isn't related to the pantheon. Then it's easy to conclude. The pantheon is part of the dusty world, but the dusty world isn't the same as the pantheon. So, what exactly are these pantheon fellows afraid to say in the realm of life? Time's up, Reneedle suddenly called out. Gu Qingshan's thoughts were cut off. He turned to look at the scene. The group of 4 people had all raised their heads to look at the sky. Why aren't they here yet? Reneedle asked. Prophecies aren't guaranteed to be accurate. The time might be slightly off, but the location is definitely in this area, Foresight deity replied. Look, another person shouted. The sky abruptly brightened. Deep within the shroud of night, a faint light slowly appeared. Almost in an instant, the light pierced through the darkness and revealed itself in the sky. A gigantic interstellar warship. Its entire body was engulfed in intense flames, but as soon as it appeared, it was already on the verge of collapse. A technological artifact. So it was a technological artifact that was able to break open the reality gate. Reneedle muttered. We need to return and develop our technology, another person shouted. They were so excited that they were going crazy. Foresight deity loudly shouted. No, look, this ship is about to collapse. There are at least hundreds of apocalypses entwined around its body. In just a few seconds, the entire starry sky battleship completely disintegrated in the sky, turning into ashes. Every single part of the ship had been completely destroyed by the apocalypse. The entire ship seemed to have melted into the void and disappeared without a trace. Completely destroyed? Reneedle asked. No, there must be something left behind. Foresight deity said. After a few breaths, in the darkness that had just returned, a streak of fire cut through the sky and fell towards where everyone was. Its speed became slower and slower. Finally, it landed on the wasteland not far from the group and floated there motionlessly. Reneedle brought the 3 of them and cautiously approached. They surrounded the thing in the middle. After a few breaths of time, there was still no movement from that thing. What exactly is this? Reneedle asked. No one answered her. People stared at the thing, but they didn't know how to answer her. It was a dark blue metallic sphere with 2 unique patterns engraved on its surface. Foresight deity, you know a bit about technological stuff. Why don't you take a look at what's written here? Reneedle asked. Foresight deity carefully looked at it, then shook his head. It's probably some kind of language. Unfortunately, I've never seen it before. The other 2 also shook their heads, expressing that they didn't understand the situation. This is the civilization outside. We need to understand what it represents first, Reneedle said in annoyance. At this point, the orange cat also came closer and saw the 2 words. Its eyes were filled with complicated emotions. The entities of the pantheon didn't recognize these words, but as someone who came from the future, he was able to recognize what they represented at a glance, because they were the most commonly used human language in the future. Human realm. It was just these 2 words that could not be more ordinary. Human realm. What does human realm represent? Many answers appeared in Gu Qingshan's mind, but he eventually settled on a certain one. But he still couldn't believe it, because if this was the same as he thought, then it would be too unimaginable, too shocking. Time silently passed. Foresight deity held the blue metallic sphere in his hand, carefully observed it, then pondered. Technological artifacts often emphasize safety, efficiency, and responsiveness, so I want to try asking it. Perhaps I'll be able to obtain some answers, Reneedle replied. Let's give it a try. Foresight deity looked at the blue sphere and asked, Where did you come from? No response. Foresight deity then asked, How did you get here? His surroundings were completely silent. The blue sphere remained motionless, not reacting at all. Foresight deity didn't give up, carefully thought for a bit, then continued to ask, "What kind of technological artifact are you?" Ting, the blue sphere began to give off a blinding glow. Following that, a rhythmic female voice resounded and began to explain with a unique rhythm, frowny face greetings. "I have now completed the derivation of your language. Understanding is at 31. 56,983%. Explaining the situation as follows. During this collision, I have received severe wounds that have surpassed my self-healing limit. Please place me at a place where I can absorb energy. Due to too many missing and damaged components, the duration of this repair cannot be determined. After the countdown, it will enter a forced hibernation state. 3, 2, 1. Entered hibernation state. From this point onwards, I will no longer be able to respond. My apologies." The blue spheres glow completely disappeared. At this point, it had become like a piece of rock. Silence filled the surroundings. Everyone was deep in thought about these words. The orange cat, who was hiding in the shadows, was completely frozen. As if something unimaginable had pierced his heart, he couldn't react in time. Sure enough, it's a technological artifact. Reneedle was the first to speak up. The entire giant shuttle was destroyed by the apocalypse, but it managed to survive, so I'm guessing that its function must be the most important of all, Foresight deity said. He carefully put the blue sphere away and said, "This thing is a clue, but we can't only pay attention to this clue. More and more things will fall into the realm of life. So we need to be vigilant and not let go of even the slightest clue." "Very well. Let's do that," Reneedle replied. She calculated the time and continued. "My spell's duration is about to end, so I need to return to the camp. Tomorrow, find a chance to run into me by chance and join my group." "Which method?" Foresight deity asked. Reneedle pondered for a bit and began to arrange for tomorrow's matters. Like this, the three deities of the pantheon stood next to her, silently listening to her plan. Gu Qingshan didn't want to listen to anything else. Reneedle's spatial technique was extremely powerful, so Gu Qingshan had to return before she did. Gu Qingshan quickly flew into the wilderness. He continuously used shadow shift to quickly travel a large distance and arrived at the camp as fast as he could. He turned back into human form and leaned against a tree. He had to use all of his strength to pretend to be asleep, because everything that happened just now caused a huge wave of shock in his heart. And the more he thought about it, the more he felt that the secret behind it was unfathomable and vast. Gu Qingshan had never felt this way before. He felt that he had just seen a huge and deep secret. This secret had been hidden in the blurry history, but it wasn't until just now that he was able to see a tiny bit of it. There's no mistaking it. The voice that came from the blue sphere just now was Impartial Goddess' voice. Impartial Goddess came from outside the reality gate. Not only that, the word human was written on its outer shell. She came from the samsara. In other words, it was the samsara that broke through the reality gate. Chapter 1543. Shroud yawned. He opened his eyes and glanced around. It was deep in the night. Scarlet and Reneedle were still asleep. Gu Qingshan had woken up and was chewing on something. "When did you wake up?" Shroud asked. "Just now," Gu Qingshan mumbled. "What are you eating?" Shroud curiously asked. His stomach let out a disappointing grumble. Gu Qingshan spat out the leaf in her mouth and said, "I'm trying to see if I can eat this leaf or not. Have we fallen to the point where we have to eat leaves?" Shroud sighed. "No, this leaf is a bit poisonous. You can't eat it," Gu Qingshan replied. While the two of them were talking, Scarlet woke up, followed by Reneedle. "What are you arguing about?" Reneedle scowled. "Road is saying that we don't have anything to eat," Shroud replied. Reneedle said, "Then let's go to the nearest settlement to take a look. Maybe we'll find some food." Everyone stood up, extinguished the campfire, packed up, covered up their traces, and prepared to leave. "We can't leave yet," Gu Qingshan suddenly said. "HM? Why not?" Reneedle asked. "There's only 3 hours left before Siming officially begins. We need to make some preparations," Gu Qingshan said. Shroud followed up. "Road is right. The first time Siming asked for 2 kinds of connections. The second time, Simon asked for 3 kinds of connections. Who knows when the third time, Simon, will come, or if there will be any changes. Scarlet was a bit desperate and asked, "Can we still form new connections?" The 4 young people all fell into thought. Siblings, friends, classmates, master and disciple, lovers. These are the most common connections between people. What else could there be? Gu Shan said, "Each of you will give me something, while I won't give you anything. This way, you'll all be my creditors." "That's a good idea," Shroud praised, then took out a candle from the Book of Prophesied Destinies and gave it to Gu Shan. "This thing looks very expensive," Gu Shan asked. Shroud explained, "A causality artifact is extremely precious. A person can only use it once in their lifetime. After you light it up, you can make a wish, then my wish will come true?" Gu Shan asked. "No, your wish will fail," Shroud replied. "What a powerful thing." Gu Shan praised and carefully put away the candle. Renito replied, "I don't have as many good things as Shroud." She thought for a moment, then took out a coin and handed it to Gu Shan. "The coin of the World Valley. This will allow you to owe me money," Renito said. "Of course," Gu Shan replied. Scarlet gave Gu Shan a comb. Gu Shan took the comb and didn't give her anything. Now, the 3 of them had established a debt relationship with Gu Shan. Suddenly, the sky lit up. Everyone looked up, only to see the shroud of night slowly receding. Tens of thousands of stars once again appeared in the night sky, giving off immense power. The cold and emotionless voice resounded again. "Everyone, there are 3 hours left until the official start of the game, but something unexpected has occurred. A detestable entity has descended within the range of the Simon game, which might cause damage to the game. Due to this irresistible situation, the game shall begin early." Early? Gu Shan's group's expressions changed. This Simon is full of lies without any rules, and now it wants to start early again. The cold voice continued, frowny face. "The rule for the first official game are as follows. Firstly, an inhuman entity with a lifespan of over 10,000 years must have 10,000 connections. Those who fail to fulfill this condition will immediately end." The young people were all anxious, so when they heard this condition, they froze. "A lifespan of over 10,000 years. Shroud repeated. "An inhuman entity?" Scarlet was confused. Gu Shan's mind quickly moved and understood. This was obviously referring to the law behemoths. Perhaps the appearance of the samsara had caused Simon to be cautious. But now, it doesn't want to play anymore. It wants to directly end all the law behemoths. Gu Shan's heart skipped a beat and couldn't help but look around, only to see a crimson figure descending from above to cover the entire ground. Following that, countless sprites of light rose from the ground and flew towards the sky. The law behemoths were all dead. These sprites of light were the world origin power left behind by the law behemoths after their deaths, which was being absorbed by Simon bit by bit. "It's over. It really is an irresistible apocalypse," Gu Shan sighed. "An unlivable apocalypse. It can take your life at any time, but sometimes it wants to toy with living beings for a bit longer, and sometimes it wants to quickly end things. But in the end, it will end everything." So this was the true meaning of unlivable. It's completely shameless. We're done for. Renito also sighed with a hesitant look in her eyes. "Indeed, I hold the 3 great laws of this world in my hands, so even if I die, I can start over again. But even if I start over again, the next Renito wouldn't be able to win against such an apocalypse." The reason why the myriad deities hid in a corner of the dusty world was to avoid such a terrifying apocalypse. Is there really a need to start over again? And I don't want to die either. But there's no other way. All of a sudden, a figure of black flames manifested next to Gu Shan. The Overlord of Death. Lines of glowing text quickly appeared in the void of space in front of it. Frowny face. "All laws will eventually wither. Only radiance and death will be the beginning and the end of everything. They will be passed on for all eternity. I will remember your wine." The glowing text quickly faded away. From the figure of black flames, a skull about the size of a fist flew out and landed in Gu Shan's hand. A split second later, the Overlord of Death turned into sprites of light and flew away. It was ended by silence. Gu Qingshan opened her mouth, but couldn't say anything. In such an apocalypse, the manifestation of the world's will, the advanced life forms manifested from the world origin power, couldn't even withstand a single blow. Even they couldn't, not to mention mortals. In the sky, the light of the stars grew brighter and brighter. The lifeless voice appeared again, speaking with a frigid tone, frowny face. The first condition has been filtered. Secondly, mortals of the surface, your nightmare is about to begin. Cry and struggle. Your connection will soon become the purgatory of your souls. Come, kill the most important person in your connection. That way, you will be able to live. The voice abruptly stopped. At the very next moment, the voice roared in both shock and anger. Samsara? No, don't even think about it. In the sky, the light of all the stars was becoming brighter and brighter, as if they were fighting against something. The voice roared in madness. Even if you have the final divine sword of the heaven realm, you will not be able to reverse everything. Entity of the samsara, you cannot stop me. Boom! What answered it was a deafening sound that resounded throughout heaven and earth. The sky darkened. The intense wind howled like the cry of a wraith. The earth trembled. The wilderness was torn apart, manifesting countless bottomless ravines in the blink of an eye. Scarlet was knocked unconscious. Gu Qingshan supported her. Shroud and Renedal were barely able to stand. Look! Shroud loudly called out. The three of them looked up at the sky. An unforgettable sight appeared. A gigantic black sword that blotted out the sun appeared from the clouds, lightly swinging towards the starlight in the sky. Billions of stars were extinguished at once. The cold and resentful voice abruptly stopped. The black sword filled up the entire sky. After it slashed down, the entire sword body gradually crumbled. It turned into countless fragments that scattered within the intense wind, quickly vanishing without a trace. In the sky, a faint female voice rang out. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, light, dark, sound, freeze. Instantly, all living beings were frozen in place. Not even the wind could move. Renedal couldn't move. Shroud couldn't move. Scarlet also couldn't move. However, Gu Qingshan wasn't frozen. He looked up at the sky, seemingly falling into a strange state of mind, his entire body trembling. Shifu, Gu Qingshan muttered in a hoarse voice. At this point, the female voice in the sky didn't seem to notice anything and sighed. At this point, we can only use this apocalypse as a disguise to prevent the other apocalypses from descending and buy time for the samsara fragments to scatter. This matter is a top secret. All living beings must not have any memories of it. Otherwise, endless calamities and calamities will follow. The apocalypses of the infinite worlds will follow and bring this world to an end. The female voice slowly became weaker. I will die and reincarnate. But if any living beings of the samsara can come to this moment, they will know. The female voice disappeared. At the same time, lines of glowing text appeared in front of Gu Qingshan's eyes. Frowny face, you are a human cultivator, the disciple of the caster of this immortal craft, the devil king of Huang Quan, the son-in-law of the Azura, the covenant and ally of the beast king realm, the master of the samsara wicked faces. You are the lord of war of the samsara. You may retain this memory. Chapter 1544. The starlight was extinguished. The sky once again fell into deep darkness. A faraway gust of wind blew across the sky, giving off layers of dark and gray ripples. The sky itself was like a silent but boiling pool. Standing in the wilderness, Gu Qingshan's mind was in turmoil and couldn't calm down for a long time. So this blurred history was Shifu's doing. Living beings had forgotten about what happened during this period of time, which ensured that the samsara wouldn't be revealed. As long as the samsara wasn't revealed, there wouldn't be an even greater calamity. Gu Qingshan thought for a long while. Her gaze fell onto the line of glowing text in the void of space and became doubtful. War God Ui. why do I have the status of Azura's son-in-law? He asked. Because you have the tier of Azura. This is the standard proof of identity for interracial marriages of the Azura realm. The war god Ui replied. Then what about the Beast King realm's covenant and ally? Gu Qing Shan asked again. The Beast King realm's heir, Shan Hai Chi Xia, was the only person in the entire tomb of myriad beasts who obtained the inheritance and still had her soul intact. She represented all the combatants of the tomb of myriad beasts who knew everything in secret, forming an alliance of life and death with you within the great tomb of myriad beasts. The war god Ui replied. Gu Qing Shan thought for a bit and recalled this. At the time, countless apocalypses were about to break out from the great tomb and destroy the entire tomb of myriad beasts. To help her and the people of the tomb of myriad beasts, I used the twin swords Heaven and Earth to travel to a parallel world, gathering many of myself to fight against the apocalypses together. It was at that time that Shan Hai Chi Xia made her vow, which means I really am related to the Beast King realm and Azura realm. Gu Qing Shan suddenly looked up. In the sky, the millions of stars had once again manifested. They had already been slashed by her sword, but they had now reappeared. Unlike before, the stars in the sky no longer gave off blinding light, nor did they give off that indescribable sense of pressure. They turned into streaks of light, scattered all over the sky, and fell from the sky to various locations on the ground. A grand and majestic meteor shower had been born. Gu Qing Shan silently watched this. Shifu wanted to use this seeming apocalypse as a cover for this world, to buy time for the samsara fragments to scatter. What a grand gesture! But he didn't know what would happen to this world next. As Gu Qing Shan was thinking silently, she suddenly heard Boss's voice. So that's how it is. In this blurry history, the secret of the 6 paths of reincarnation is hidden. No wonder I feel that my memory is blurry. Gu Qing Shan explained, the Pantheon appear because they noticed the situation ahead of time, so they arranged for Renedal to appear and search for the entity that opened the reality gate during the apocalypse, Boss said, but they don't know that it's the 6 paths of reincarnation. Yes, Gu Qing Shan replied. Boss said, fortunately, you came to this period of time. This period of history has gradually become clear and stabilized. It will not change anymore. In the void, a blank page appeared out of thin air and fell into Gu Qing Shan's hand. A line of glowing text quickly appeared on the war god Ui. Frowny face, you've obtained the 3rd sealing token. There are a total of 6 of these sealing tokens. You will need to obtain the other 3 sealing tokens. After reading through it, Gu Qing Shan pondered for a bit, then doubtfully asked, Boss, if Renedal were to redo this period of history, wouldn't everything happen again? Boss replied with a complicated tone. This period of history has been completely stabilized and will not change again, but a new problem has arisen. What problem? Gu Qing Shan asked. Boss explained, the samsara's amnesia technique is extremely powerful. The stronger a living being is, the more they would forget under this technique. But the Pantheon used their ultimate technique on Renedal, gathering the power of the myriad deities. You're saying that Renedal has forgotten a lot of things, but the Pantheon has a way to make her remember them? Gu Qing Shan asked. Renedal has indeed lost a lot of her memories. But if this Renedal were to die, the new Renedal would be able to remember everything that happened to the previous Renedal, and that new Renedal would know the truth, Boss explained. Gu Qing Shan was a bit surprised, then understood. Indeed, the new Renedal would be able to regain her previous memories. Shifu wanted to make everyone in the world fall into the amnesia technique, but she didn't target a single individual like Renedal. If this Renedal were to die, the amnesia technique would also disappear. This way, the next Renedal would be able to undo the samsara's amnesia technique. The next Renedal would be able to remember everything together. Boss's words sped up. I can't tell you any more. The 4th seal will be hidden in the future. First, you must ensure your own survival. Then you must protect Renedal and not let her die. If she were to die, the Pantheon would immediately obtain her memories and learn everything that happened on the surface. Do not let the Pantheon know what happened today. Do your best to delay their actions. When Renedal survives until a certain point, you'll be able to see the 4th seal, Gu Qing Shan smiled bitterly. Can't you just give it to me? Boss paused, then helplessly replied. When I was still the Lord of Infinite Origins, during the days when I was at my strongest, I spent all of my power to create these 6 sealing tokens. Do you think the current me would be able to undo them? Do your best, Gu Qing Shan. It's all up to you. Boss's voice slowly faded away. Once again, Gu Qing Shan was the only one left in this period of time. Gu Qing Shan could only sigh. For some reason, he suddenly recalled the giant corpse's words. The Lord of Infinite Origins did something that was absolutely correct within the fog of history, which was to create the 6 sealing tokens within the ruins of the Pantheon. You must obtain these 6 sealing tokens. Once you hold the sealing tokens, regardless of what happens in history, they will be under your control without any issues. Gu Qing Shan silently put the 3rd sealing token away. There were 3 left. At this point, the stars in the sky had completely disappeared. The shroud of night returned to normal. The east slowly turned bright. The morning breeze carried a hint of coolness that brushed against Gu Qing Shan's face, making him feel a bit more spirited. Strange, what happened? A voice resounded from behind him. Gu Qing Shan turned back, only to see that Shroud, Reneedle, and Scarlet all had confused expressions on their faces. Shroud looked around and said, "The law behemoths went berserk in order to kill us, so why can't I sense their existence at all?" Scarlet replied, "I remember that they were about to face a calamity. Look, there isn't even a single trace of life in this wilderness, so something big must have happened in the world of laws." Reneedle looked around and couldn't help but grab Shroud's hand. "What's the matter, Reneedle?" Shroud asked. Reneedle's expression was a bit pale and muttered, "I don't know. I feel like I'm forgetting something very important." "Me too," Gu Qing Shan said. He walked towards Reneedle and said, "I only remember that the law behemoths seem to be fighting against one another, but I don't remember anything else after that. What about you?" Reneedle tried her best to recall and slowly replied, "I only remember that you and Shroud saved me when I was young. We studied world techniques and law techniques together. Then the World Valley was destroyed. We escaped. Then I don't remember anything else." Gu Qing Shan looked at her. Her eyes were filled with confusion and fear. The Samsara's amnesia technique was extremely powerful. The stronger a living being was, the more they would forget under this technique, and the stronger a person was, the more they would forget. These are Boss's exact words. Although he had lost his powers, his eyes were still sharp. In that case, Reneedle even forgot that she came from the Pantheon? How interesting. Chapter 1545. The first light of dawn had risen. The 4 young people stood in the middle of the wilderness, feeling a bit lost. In the void of space, the spatial seal that the law behemoths had set up was still there. This was probably caused by the law behemoths, but they no longer exist, Shroud said with a heavy tone. Reneedle calmly said, "If that's the case, you're the only person left in this world who has the power of the laws." "There's still me," Gu Qing Shan replied. He opened his palm to show the skull to everyone. The law of radiance manifested as the book of prophesied destinies. The law of death manifested as the death god's head. Other than that, the other overlords have all completely disappeared. Strange, did they really die? Scarlet asked. "Most likely. Otherwise I would have been able to sense them," Shroud replied. "Then why do we lose a bit of our memories?" "I'm not sure about that." Everyone exchanged glances, full of confusion. Scarlet sighed and said, "No matter what, from now on, the 2 strongest people in this world will be Shroud and Road. After all, only the 2 of you can control the power of the laws. Let me try," Gu Qing Shan said. He held the skull in one hand and opened his other hand. A cluster of black flames abruptly manifested and silently burned in his hand. That seems to be the case. As long as there is death, my power will grow stronger." Gu Qing Shan pondered and looked towards the wilderness. Within the desolate wilderness, all insects and animals had been killed by Siming. The law behemoths were all dead. Most of the other sentient life forms had probably died as well. If that's the case, the power of the law of death wouldn't be able to grow stronger, Gu Qing Shan silently thought. Next to him, Scarlet also opened her hand. attempting to trigger something. Unfortunately, nothing happened. Scarlet shook her head in disappointment. Gu Qingshan glanced at her and pondered. In the following period of time, the four of them made some preparations before rushing toward the nearest human settlement. After all, it wasn't a good idea to stay in the wilderness for too long. There might be food, supplies, and information in human settlements. The sky was completely bright. The blazing sun hung in the boundless blue sky, baking the ground even hotter. The wilderness was as silent as a graveyard. After running for about half an hour, the four youths were soon drenched in sweat. Suddenly, Shroud loudly shouted, "Look, what's that in the sky?" Everyone looked up. In the sky above, a beam of light descended from the heavens, descending rapidly into the wilderness. Reneedle's expression changed, and she said, "Let's go take a look." With that, she disappeared from where she stood. Gu Qingshan's heart skipped a beat. "Let's go, let's catch up." The samsara charged through the reality gate. It shattered into countless pieces. Then, other than impartial goddess, there must be a lot of other fallen objects that will gradually descend upon this world. I must go and take a look. The three of them ran with all their might towards the place where the streak of light had fallen. Not long after, the ground in front of them shook violently. It was obvious that the streak of light had hit the ground. The three of them sped up and quickly found Reneedle. Reneedle stood in front of a large pit and stared blankly into it. Gu Qingshan calmed herself down, walked up to her with Shroud and Scarlet, and looked into the pit. At the center of the pit, a streamlined piece of metal about 15 meters in length silently laid there. "It seems to be a cultivation-type creation," Shroud commented. Reneedle scowled. "I'm not familiar with cultivation-type creations." Gu Qingshan jumped down in the pit, slid down in front of the piece of metal, and carefully observed it. A small part of the piece of metal had been broken off, pierced deep into the ground, occasionally giving off chaotic noises of electricity. It should be a technological creation. While saying so, he was searching for any buttons or touch points on the seamless surface of the piece of metal. Unfortunately, he couldn't find anything. Even the area where the piece was broken off had slowly solidified into a sealed state. "The material is quite nice," Gu Qingshan praised. Seeing how excited Gu Qingshan was, Scarlet was a bit worried and spoke up. "The elder said in class that normal people wouldn't be able to use technological creations, and if you try it carelessly, there would often be problems. I'm not satisfied until I try," Gu Qingshan replied. He placed his hand on the surface of the piece of metal. Immediately, a gentle electronic voice resounded. "Frowny face unregistered user. Unable to use," Gu Qingshan said. "Apply for registration," the electronic voice continued. "According to your personal brainwaves, your archaic racer qualification certificate could not be found in the certificate database. You are unable to apply for registration, racer? You call this 15-meter-long piece of metal eraser?" Shroud spoke up. "Forget it. Let's go." Technological creations are very particular about authority. Without authority, even if you break it apart, you won't be able to use it. That is indeed the case, Scarlet also agreed. Gu Qingshan nodded. Of course he knew that was the case, but this was a technological creation from the human realm of the samsara, and this was a racer. If I don't try it out, how could I be satisfied? Gu Qingshan thought for a few seconds, then suddenly said, "We're currently trapped in the wilderness with no food to be found. I request emergency assistance," the electronic voice immediately replied. "Begin environmental monitoring and situation analysis." A laser beam shot out from the piece of metal and quickly flew across the wilderness. The area within a radius of 7,965 kilometers is a lifeless area. This environment poses a fatal threat to normal people. Begin contact with emergency assistance. No one is answering. Initiating backup strategy. Initiating autopilot mode. Split into number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4 based on the command of the person requesting assistance. Initiating transformation. The 15-meter-long, streamlined piece of metal quickly unfolded and turned into 4 two-wheeled motorcycles in a single second. The electronic voice resounded from the motorcycles. "Ladies and gentlemen, the Retro Motorcycle Racing League is equipped with a professional wilderness escape strategy. Please sit on the motorcycles, and we will leave this dangerous wilderness. Guqin Shan sighed in relief and sat on one of the motorcycles first. He turned to the other three people. Come on, this saves stamina, and it's fast, Guqin Shan called out to the three people on top of the crater. The three of them exchanged glances. I don't know how to ride it. Shroud was a bit nervous. It's fine, Guqin Shan loudly replied. Technology focuses on serving humans the most. It's very safe. After saying so, he patted the motorcycles. Buddy, it's a long ride. Let's play some music. What type do you like? The electronic voice asked. Rock, Guqin Shan replied. I only have the most retro rock music here. The electronic voice replied. Come. Dong 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 dong. The sound of a drum beat resounded. At another location, three men were standing at the edge of the wilderness. Foresight deity, poison deity, and shadow deity. They were resurrected by Renedal in this world, then agreed to search for the visitors outside the reality gate. But right now, they had forgotten everything related to last night. How strange. What exactly was it that directly erased a portion of my memories? Foresight deity muttered to himself. Regardless of what it was, we need to find Renedal first, poison deity said. Indeed, it wasn't easy for us to arrive at the realm of life. But we completely forgot what happened last night. Only by finding her will we be able to learn the truth, Foresight deity replied. He closed his eyes and muttered something. A few moments later, she didn't respond to my incantation. Foresight deity opened his eyes and said, Perhaps she's being held back by something. I have a second set of code here. I'll contact her, shadow deity said. After saying so, he began to chant the code. Still no response. The three deities exchanged glances, their expressions turning solemn. Renedal actually didn't respond to our attempts to contact her. What exactly happened to her? No, we need to find her, poison deity resolutely said. I disagree, Foresight deity said. Why not? Poison deity stared at him with a sharp gaze. Foresight deity replied, She's more powerful than all of us. If there's something that can trap her to the point where she can't contact us at all, it would be pointless for us to go there, shadow deity also agreed. That's true. If we die in the realm of life, we'll truly be dead. We can't risk it so easily, poison deity hesitated. Foresight deity said, Let's wait for a result. If the situation on her side is too dire, as long as she can use the code to call for help, we'll definitely go and save her, That's the only thing we could do, poison deity sighed. While they were talking, some noises could be heard from afar. The three deities immediately looked towards the wilderness, only to see that the yellow sand-covered ground was filled with dust. Buzz, 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 buzz. The sound of the high-powered engines was loud and noisy. Among the intense noise, a rock-and-roll voice resounded in the middle of the desert, making everyone feel refreshed and excited. The four motorbikes were extremely fast, passing by the three deities in a flash and quickly disappearing on the road ahead. The three deities were covered in dust from the motorbikes, but they still stood still without moving. That was... Poison deity said hesitantly. Motorbikes? I don't remember her knowing how to use one. Shadow deity hesitantly said. Foresight deity jumped up and loudly shouted, No, it's her. It's Renedal. Quickly chase after her. Chapter 1546. The motorbikes were fast, but the three deities were even faster. With a light sweep, they caught up with the speeding motorcycles and far surpassed them, blocking the road ahead. The four motorbikes slowly stopped. The young people and the three deities observed each other. The three deities naturally knew who these young people were. Recalling the bounty that the law behemoths had placed on them, the young people immediately became cautious of these strangers. Shroud held the book of prophesied destinies in his hand and asked, Who are you? Why are you blocking our way? There's no one in the wilderness. We can't find anything to eat or drink. We saw your motorbike just now, so we wanted to join you and leave this wilderness together, Foresight deity replied. Shroud pursued, Which realm exactly are you from? Foresight deity replied, We are from the Pantheon. He turned to Renedal, only to see that Renedal was cautiously observing him. What's going on? She doesn't seem to be reacting to the Pantheon at all, Shroud replied. We only have 4 motorbikes, so we can't take you with us, Scarlet also said. If I remember correctly, there's a small settlement about 300 miles ahead of us. With your speed, you should be able to reach it very quickly. The 3 deities exchanged glances. Poison Deity couldn't help but ask, Reneedle, do you really not recognize us? The young people's expressions changed. They actually recognized Reneedle. Reneedle appeared a bit cautious and asked, I've never seen you before. How do you recognize me? Poison Deity replied, We were all summoned by you. Shut up. Foresight Deity shouted. Poison Deity didn't say anything else. Foresight Deity took 2 steps forward and stared straight at Reneedle. Something major happened last night. All the law behemoths no longer exist. This world is undergoing an unprecedented change. We've all forgotten what happened last night. Everyone forgets a lot of things, Reneedle pondered. If I'm somehow related to you, do you have a way to prove it? Reneedle, Shroud anxiously called out. It's fine, Shroud. I also want to know what I forgot, Reneedle said. The Foresight Deity pondered for a while, then stepped aside and said, You go first. We need to think about how to deal with this matter first. Then we'll contact you. Reneedle was stunned. Foresight Deity looked at the youths and gently said, Go. There aren't many people left in the inhabited area up ahead. You're all hungry, so go eat something first. We'll come find you later. He made a gesture. Poison God and Dark God also gave way. The youths looked at each other. Let's go. We really need to replenish our strength, Gu Qingshan said. The motorcycle slowly sped up and flew past the 3 gods. Soon, the 4 motorcycles disappeared at the end of the road, and only some flying dust could be seen in the distance. Prophecy God, Reneedle seems to have completely forgotten about us. What should we do now? Poison God asked. With our combined power, we can send a message back to the Pantheon. What we need now is the wisdom of the Pantheon. Think of a way. While Foresight Deity was talking, he suddenly stopped. The 3 gods looked up at the same time. A faint streak of light appeared in the sky, descending into the wilderness. Let's take a look, Foresight Deity said. Got it. The 3 gods leapt forward and headed towards the place where the streak of light landed. A few minutes later, they stood at the edge of a deep crater and looked down. At the center of this crater that looked like a meteor, a mask silently laid there. A broken blade was giving off a faint ringing sound. Foresight Deity jumped down, crouched down, and reassembled the broken pieces of the blade. A faint light flashed on the long saber. A sigh resounded. There's no time. Clatter, clatter. The broken pieces scattered everywhere as the blade collapsed again. It no longer gave off a ringing sound. The faint glow that lingered around the blade also disappeared. Foresight Deity slowly stood up and said, This blade is dead. What did it say just now? Poison God couldn't help but ask. Shadow Deity mused. It seems to be a language I've never heard of before. Foresight Deity didn't say anything and simply picked up the blade's hilt to carefully examine it. 2 strange characters were engraved on the hilt. Foresight Deity took something out from his chest. The blue sphere of metal. He placed the sphere and the hilt together. 2 words were engraved on the sphere, human realm. Another 2 words were engraved on the sword hilt. They seem to be of the same style, Shadow Deity commented. Indeed, this matter has far exceeded my expectations. Foresight Deity's expression slowly became serious, causing Shadow Deity and Poison God to feel anxious. In a single night, all the law behemoths died. All living beings, including us deities, had forgotten what happened, and strange things would fall from the sky. Foresight Deity asked. What are you trying to say? Shadow Deity asked. We need to find out what exactly happened last night. This is very important, very important. It might even be related to the fate of the realm of life, as well as the fate of each and every one of us, Foresight Deity replied. But no matter what technique we use, we can't recall what happened last night, Poison God said. The 3 deities went silent. We can't wait any longer. We need to contact the Pantheon right now, Foresight Deity resolutely declared. Poison God and Shadow Deity exchanged glances and nodded. At another location, for young people were riding their motorbikes forward. Tall trees, fields, and simple houses could be seen on both sides of the road. Gu Shan tapped on a motorbike and asked, "How strong were those people just now?" An electronic voice resounded from the motorbike. According to the human strength detector, the three of them could kill two of you in 1 minute, which meant Shroud and Scarlet in their younger days. As for Reneedle, they would probably need to expend a lot of effort to deal with her. If Gu Shan was by herself, she would be able to escape. But what would be the point of running away by herself? Reneedle had already forgotten her memories of being in the Pantheon, so she naturally forgot how to exert her original strength, so she would need some time to get used to her new power. If this Reneedle died, the newly born Reneedle would learn about the samsara, and Sherfu's disguise would also become ineffective. The apocalypse would also arrive even faster. If another, Siming, appeared, Gu Shan turned to Reneedle and asked in surprise, "How did you get to know such powerful people?" Reneedle shook her head. "I'm not sure either. It's probably related to my lost memories." Gu Shan suddenly felt a sense of danger. He tapped the motorbike and said, "I'm going to call the police. I suspect that those people just now wanted to kill one of us." The motorbike didn't react right away. Bam! A small metal sphere flew out from the motorbike and turned into a puff of white smoke that shot into the sky. A few moments later, the sound of conversation could be heard from the motorbike. A voice that they had never heard before spoke. "You can't awaken her memories. Even your lost memories have been lost forever. There's no way to awaken them." Foresight deity's voice resounded. "Then what exactly should we do?" "That's right. We risked the apocalypse to return to the realm of life, only for something like this to happen. What exactly should we do?" Poison God also asked. The voice from before replied, "There's no other way. We can only kill her. The next one will regain her previous memories. That way, we'll know what exactly happened. Go. Kill Reneedle." Instantly, the voices of conversation stopped. The four young men's expressions changed. "They want to kill me," Reneedle blankly muttered. The cold electronic voice resounded. "Frowny face through satellite. Real-time monitoring of the situation has been conducted. In accordance with Article 232 of the Danger Prevention Law, the following conclusion has been made. A murder is about to occur. The probability of it being realized is 99.5%. The four motorbikes slowed down and finally stopped on the road. They turned into liquid metal, gathered together, and began to morph. This equipment is a retro motorbike specifically designed for the wilderness bidding competition, not a combat product, currently being optimized to buy time for you. Estimated time of battle: 3 hours, 21 minutes, 19 seconds. Battle result: this equipment has been completely destroyed. The enemy has escaped." Following the electronic voice, a 9-meter-tall metal mech appeared in front of the four of them. It drew a large cannon from its back and aimed it at the path it came from. A loud noise resounded from deep inside the cannon. At this point, 3 figures appeared at the end of the road. "Ready," the electronic voice resounded from the metal mech. At the very next moment, a dazzling light flashed past. The air around them trembled. Scarlet was sent flying, then caught by Gu Shan, followed by a deafening sound. Boom! Dirt was sent flying into the sky. The road completely disappeared. "They're not dead. Run," the metal mech told the 4 young men. Chapter 1547. Run. As soon as the metal mech shouted, Gu Shan grabbed Scarlet and ran as fast as she could towards the other side of the road. Shroud and Reneedle followed closely behind them. The mech had made it very clear just now. They weren't a match for those 3. Sounds of explosions and explosions resounded behind them. The ground was constantly trembling. Dust filled the air. The shockwaves created a gust of wind that enveloped the 4 of them and helped them leave the battlefield as quickly as possible. The 4 of them didn't dare to look back and simply ran as fast as they could. "Reneedle, how are they related to you?" Gu Shan loudly asked as they ran. Reneedle's expression was a bit pale and shook her head. "I don't know, but they want to kill you," Gu Shan said. Reneedle didn't say anything and simply clenched her fists. "Look, the settlement is right ahead." Shroud loudly called out. A cluster of buildings that looked like a small town appeared in everyone's vision. We're not going in. Let's keep going, Reneedle said. Gu Shan glanced at her. This woman is afraid. We can't, Gu Shan said. We haven't eaten anything for an entire day. We need to go in and find some food to replenish ourselves, Reneedle said. But that robot can't stop. Gu Shan cut her off. Even if we keep running without stopping, those three will eventually catch up to us. They're very strong, much stronger than we are. Reneedle was speechless. That's right. From a speed they displayed just now, they'll definitely be able to catch up to us. What now? The town was right in front of them. Gu Shan's gaze swept through the area and immediately headed toward a certain building. Shroud, Reneedle, and Scarlet quickly followed. Bam! Gu Shan kicked the door open and looked inside the bar. A few glasses of wine were placed on the empty bar. A half-baked bun that had been left overnight was brown, and a steak that had long since gone cold lay on the floor of the aisle, covered with dust. Who has a space container? Gu Shan asked. Me. Shroud raised the book of prophesied destinies and gestured. Gu Shan immediately assigned them. Scarlet, Reneedle, the two of you rest here. Shroud, come with me to the kitchen to pack some food. The two of them leaped over the bar counter and headed for the kitchen. Seeing that, Scarlet found a sofa and sat down comfortably. Come, sit down and take this time to rest. She waved her hand at Reneedle. Reneedle seemed to be in a daze, and it took her a while to sit down. They want to kill me, Reneedle muttered to herself. Seeing her like that, Scarlet consoled her. It's okay. With Road and Shroud here, they'll definitely have a way. Reneedle looked at her. Scarlet smiled bitterly and said dejectedly, At least you still have your own unique ability and can participate in battle. But I've already given up my support ability, and I no longer have the power of death, so I'm afraid I won't be able to fight alongside everyone. Reneedle silently thought for a while, then suddenly stood up, walked behind the bar counter, and picked out a bottle of liquor. She put it in front of Scarlet and said, Try it. Scarlet looked at the liquor, gulped, and shook her head. The Overlord of Death is no longer here. What's the point of drinking? Reneedle explained. The law behemoths have indeed all died, so Shroud is now essentially the new Overlord of Radiance, while Road is the Overlord of Death. If you use liquor as a catalyst to summon his law of death, you might be able to succeed. Scarlet received the bottle, gritted her teeth, and gulped it down. Clang! She put the empty bottle on the table, opened her hand, and muttered, Road, please grant me the power of death, the kitchen. Gu Shan immediately sensed it. How miraculous. Is it because I like to drink, and she also likes to drink, so she's naturally compatible with my power of death? He muttered in a low voice, then suddenly reached his hand out and lightly pressed it against the void of space. Streaks of starlight appeared out of nowhere, manifesting before Gu Shan could react, and manifested into a scroll filled with starlight. The scroll flew into the void of space and hovered in front of Scarlet. Scarlet took a closer look, only to see the words written on it. You provide for me, and I grant you the power of death. Scarlet was overjoyed and hurriedly placed her hand on the scroll. Oh! The scroll burned to nothing. A black scythe made of black flames appeared from the void of space and landed in Scarlet's hand. Success! Scarlet exclaimed in surprise, then smiled brightly. Finally! I can finally fight again. She put the scythe down and hugged Reneedle. Thank you, Reneedle. You've helped me a lot. Reneedle smiled. In truth, this was something that could be concluded with a calm analysis. Shroud, Road. The two of them would become the last two overlords of this world. However, there was a question. If the other overlords were all dead, what would happen to their powers? Reneedle pondered and looked up at the starlight above her head. 3 specks of starlight were lightly hovering above her head. Starlight. I'll have to confirm this in the world of laws. But it's too dangerous right now, so I can't go there. Those 3 people wanted to kill me. Reneedle lightly scowled. I still can't remember who those 3 people were. Kill me. She shook her head and muttered, I grew up in the World Valley. How would I know these vicious fellows? That's unbelievable. Gu Qin Shan and Shroud came out of the kitchen and happened to hear what she said. Shroud quickly walked forward, held her hand, and resolutely told her, "Don't think too much. There aren't many living beings left in this world. We need to survive," Gu Qin Shan added. "If anyone wants to kill you, Shroud and I will take their life." Renito looked at the two of them and couldn't help but nod. In this hopeless situation of death, I still have trustworthy companions. But why am I feeling so emotional? For some reason, Renito felt her eyes becoming a bit warm, so she hurriedly turned her head away and changed the topic. "Did you find anything to eat?" Gu Qin Shan and Shroud exchanged glances and smiled. "There was a food storage room in the back. We've already emptied it," Shroud replied. The two of them took out various food and drinks and placed them all on the table. The four of them were starving, so they sat around the table and ate. Even if they wanted to escape, they needed to have the stamina to do so. "Road, and I thought about it. We can't just keep running like this. After all, the other party is faster than us," Shroud said. "Then what do we do?" Renito asked. "Let's talk after we finish eating. There's another way," Gu Qin Shan said mysteriously. While eating, Scarlet spoke with interest. "Road, you were able to manifest a covenant of death. Seems like you'll truly become the god of death from now on." Gu Qin Shan tilted her head and doubtfully said, "When I used the power of the law of death, there seemed to be some other power helping me." "Helping you?" the other three asked at the same time. "Yes, it was a star-like power." At this point, Gu Qin Shan suddenly stopped. "Stars," he recalled. The stars in the sky were the manifestation of Apocalypse, Siming's power. When Shifu appeared, I could sense that she was already at the end of her tether. Both her cultivation and power were on the verge of collapse. Even so, Shifu still managed to kill Siming with a single strike. In that case, what was going on with these stars? Did Shifu secretly change something? Gu Qin Shan took a deep breath and chanted, "The lives of all living beings belong to the Overlord of Death. Prostrate at my feet and embrace your death." Boundless starlight gathered around his body, eventually manifesting as a cluster of black flames that silently floated without moving. Gu Qin Shan sensed the power of the black flames and mused, "I'm not using my power, but rather the world origin power itself gathering for my use." Renito froze, then looked up at the starlight above her head again. "This seems..." Shroud also reached his hand out and chanted, "The power of radiance and dawn dispel all evil. It is time for the angel to descend and arrive for me." Countless stars revolved around him, then manifested as the light of dawn and gathered in his hand. This glorious and solemn light illuminated the four of them, dispelling their fatigue. It was very effective. Shroud thought for a bit, then said, "The laws of the world have completely changed." "What do you mean?" Gu Qin Shan asked. "From now on, the world origin power will be manifested as stars. The more stars you can manifest, the more you'll be able to grasp the power of the laws," Shroud replied. "So there's no need to communicate with the law behemoths anymore?" Renito asked. "There's no need, unless you want to obtain the power of radiance or death. Only then would you need to communicate with Road and me," Shroud replied. The four of them slowly realized a certain problem and fell silent. Scarlet struggled to speak. "In other words, yes, that's right," Shroud nodded. Renito sighed, then said in shock, "From now on, everyone will be able to absorb the power of the stars, becoming an entity on par with the law behemoths, or even surpassing them, Gu Qin Shan added. Chapter 1548. The laws of the entire world had changed. In the past, the law behemoths were existences that mortals could only look up to. Every professionist could only borrow their power, and only the most powerful world valley could form a covenant with the law behemoths and summon them. But now, everyone could embrace the stars, gather their power, and surpass the law behemoths. Realizing this, the four youths were so shocked that they couldn't say a word. "Shroud, can you still hear those strange voices?" Gu Qin Shan asked. Shroud was a bit surprised, then closed his eyes and carefully sensed it. A few moments later, "I can hear them. They're all screaming, shouting, roaring. and saying the same thing, Shroud slowly replied. Gu Qingshan immediately asked, "What are they saying?" Shroud opened his eyes with a hint of wariness in his gaze. He glanced at his companions and whispered, "They're saying that the gate is about to fully open." Reneedle calmly asked, "What exactly are those talking entities?" "I don't know," Shroud shook his head. "Could they be the entities that killed all the law behemoths?" As soon as she said that, Scarlet suddenly covered her mouth as a layer of cold sweat appeared on her back. If that really was the case, then that would be terrifying. Shroud and Reneedle's expressions also changed. But Gu Qingshan knew that wasn't the case at all. They were the awaitings. The samsara had broken through a gap in the reality gate, and this gap was continuously expanding, which means the awaitings and a large number of apocalypses are about to arrive. Carefully thinking about it, Gu Qingshan noticed something else. Siming had taken away the power of all the law behemoths and killed countless living beings, only to be slain by Shifu with a single strike of her sword. Perhaps the change in this world was Shifu's doing? She wanted to help the people of this world become stronger. After all, the reality gate was about to fully open. Gu Qingshan sighed and glanced at the table. The food and drinks had all been swept clean, and everyone had eaten their fill. "Shroud, we can't waste any more time, begin," he said. "All right," Shroud replied. Reneedle looked at the two and asked, "What are you planning to do?" Shroud replied, "Road feels like we can't outrun those pursuers, so we have to think of another way. What is it?" "It's this." Shroud lightly tapped the void of space with his hand. Bang! A thumb-sized, green-clothed fairy appeared in front of everyone. "Shroud, you finally want to play with me?" The green pixie happily asked. "That's right, this time, it's not just for fun. Because someone is chasing after us, we want to find a place to hide," Shroud said. Realization dawned on the green-robed fairy. She patted her chest and said, "Then you found the right person. As long as we fairies want to hide, no one can find us." Seeing this, Reneedle heaved a sigh of relief and said softly, "So that's how it is." Fairies are best at hiding. It's great that they're willing to help. Hearing Reneedle's words, the green pixie turned to her and called out, "Ah, it's you." Back then, Shroud spent quite a bit of effort to save your life. Reneedle smiled and replied, "That's right. I heard that he went straight to find you." The green pixie chuckled and replied, "It can't be helped. Who told us pixies quipcraft to be the best at saving people?" It jumped down from the table, walked to a corner of the bar, stood next to a wooden table, and lightly tapped the ground with its hand. A few moments later, a cautious voice resounded from underground. "Who is it?" The green pixie lowered its voice and replied, "It's me." The voice from underground relaxed a bit and said, "So it's you?" "Yes, it's me, but who exactly are you?" "I'm me. Why did you have to ask such a complicated question in this secret passage? Which idiot set up this Q&A?" The green pixie panicked. I'm sorry." The voice hurriedly apologized. The floor parted to reveal a staircase leading downwards. "Follow me." The green pixie turned around and said. The four young people quickly stood up and followed it underground. After they went down, the floor quickly closed up again. It was even covered in a thin layer of dust, making it impossible to see any traces of it. Gu Qingshan's group walked down the stairs and arrived at a large hall. This place was filled with pixies, around 1,000 of them. They were all lying on the ground, completely motionless and without any signs of life. The green pixie covered his eyes and sighed. "Oh my God, that's terrible." The young people all lowered their heads. Gu Qingshan sighed and said, "My condolences." Burp. A loud burp resounded from among the pixies. Gu Qingshan paused and looked toward the pixies. There was no movement. The pixies still had no signs of life and were lying motionless on the ground. The green pixie said, "Ignore them. They're currently participating in a drunken feigned death bidding competition. They're currently pretending to be corpses, unable to move or speak." "Let's go." Shroud couldn't help but ask, "Then why did you say that's terrible earlier?" The green pixie looked at him strangely, then very naturally replied, "I was just helping them create an atmosphere." Everyone was speechless. It can't be helped. You never know what the pixies will do next. Gu Qingshan's thoughts turned and asked, "Last night, Quite a few living beings on the surface disappeared, but not many pixies seem to have gone missing, the green pixie replied. About that, I asked my uncle's aunt's younger brother's wife's, second uncle's aunt's older sister's older brother's father's brother-in-law. He said that his mother's older sister's playmates, grandfather's friends, son's brother's grandmother said that something did happen last night, but that it wouldn't affect us pixies, Gu Qing Shan. With your relationship, Simon really wouldn't be able to easily affect you. The green pixie led the four of them through the hall, headed deep underground, and finally arrived at a golden train station. In 2 minutes, the train will be here, the green pixie said. We're going to take the train to leave? Shroud asked. The green pixie took out 4 train tickets from his chest and gave them to the 4 of them. He replied, Of course, this is the best way to avoid being hunted down. The Quipcraft train will take you underground. It's very fast, so it will take you to, please take a look at the station written on the tickets. The 4 of them looked down, only to see the words on the tickets. Drunken Play Dead Competition, Scavenger Station, Shroud said. Seems like we're going to the Scavenger Station. The green pixie was surprised. What? You want to go to the Scavenger Station? TSK. What exactly are you thinking? Shroud, Gu Qing Shan replied. You were the one who gave us the tickets. The pixie shrugged and replied. That's not something I can control. There's a Quipcraft on the tickets that will automatically choose a suitable place for you. Oh, rumble, rumble, rumble. The sound of a train resounded from afar. All right, go to the Scavenger Station. Perhaps you'll get lucky there, the green pixie said. Wait a minute. What kind of place is the Scavenger Station exactly? Gu Qing Shan asked. The green pixie tapped the ground with his foot and replied. It's a junkyard, close to the remnants of the previous era's civilization. Sometimes we would go there to pick up a few strange and worthless items, then use them to conduct a fair trade with other races. What was the previous era's civilization? Gu Qing Shan asked again. Did you not study your history class properly? The green pixie's eyes appeared contemptuous and replied, The ruins of the Pantheon are located deep underground. Those cowardly deities abandoned the entire world and went hiding somewhere unknown. However, a few strange things have been falling from the sky recently. So we pixies had organized a garbage sorting program there, hoping to find something valuable from the things that fell. So, it's currently quite noisy over there. There's no harm in you taking a look. Chapter 1549. The train was quickly traveling through the underground tunnel. There were no other passengers on the entire train, only Gu Qing Shan's group of 4. Shroud reached his hand out and grasped a cluster of starlight in his hand. A small blue vortex was circling around his hand, constantly rotating. Reneedle exclaimed in admiration. How impressive! In such a short amount of time, you've already managed to draw upon the power of 4 stars. Shroud smiled and shook his head. From the void of space, another weak cluster of starlight appeared, slowly grew brighter, and entered his hand. He fell into thought for a long while before muttering to himself. The law behemoths are no longer here. As a mortal, what exactly should I do in order to obtain as much world origin power as possible? After a bit of thought, Shroud reached his hand out and began to manipulate the stars in the void of space. This caused the other 3 to be stunned. As expected of the most talented mortal, he managed to learn how to manipulate the stars manifested as world origin power in such a short amount of time. No, that's not right. That's not right either. Could it be? Shroud rearranged the stars back and forth until they formed an incomplete shape. What is this? Gu Qing Shan asked with interest. Shroud took a deep breath and wiped the sweat off his forehead. I wanted to create the shape of a spear made of stars. Unfortunately, I'm still lacking a few stars. It seems I'll have to wait until I'm stronger before I can attempt this. You believe that manifesting the laws as weapons is the key to using the power of the stars? Gu Qing Shan asked. Indeed, the power of the stars is actually the unconscious world origin power, but it seems to have gained something else that caused an unprecedented qualitative change. Not only can the stars be manifested as weapons, but they should also be manifested as armor. These things would be more powerful than any magical artifact. They could be considered the manifestation of the world's soul. Perhaps they could be considered as the soul artifacts of the distant legends? The more Shroud spoke, the more excited he became, his eyes glowing. Soul artifacts are indeed the most powerful artifacts of the legends. I also hope that this weapon of yours can reach that level, Reneedle nodded. Shroud continued. Other than artifacts, these stars should be able to allow mortals to evolve and become law behemoths. However, we can't do that for now. Let's first condense the stars into soul tools. The stars in his hand began to transform, combine, and finally form a slightly shorter spear. For more stars before it can be completely formed. Shroud breathed heavily as he said that, then reached his hand out to guide the starlight from the void of space. Moments later, another star flew out from the void and landed in his hand. Shroud's body began to tremble, as if he had reached his limit. Guqin Shan did not even blink as she watched the other party's attempt without making a sound. Reneedle couldn't help but advise him. It's fine, Shroud. This is already very impressive. Let's rest for a bit and try again next time. Shroud's expression was calm as he replied. The people chasing after you are very powerful. I need to quickly become stronger in order to protect you. Reneedle was stunned. She was silent for a while, then suddenly clenched her fist on top of her head. The 3 stars were held between her fingers and brought to Shroud. Knight, look at her. I happen to have 3 stars. Reneedle also looked at him and said softly. Shroud slowly smiled. Very well. Then let us construct this spear together and see if its power is as we imagined it to be. He took the stars and arranged them one by one in the positions where the pieces were missing. In a few moments, the spear was completed. A moment of silence. All of a sudden, the spear of stars gave off a blinding light. It slowly manifested from the stars and turned into a real spear. The spear fell into Shroud's hand and continued to radiate 3 different kinds of light: blue, orange, and red. How beautiful! Reneedle was mesmerized by it and sighed. I can sense a very powerful law. Is this the power that law behemoths possess? Scarlet also excitedly asked. Shroud held the spear in his hand for a while before he replied. It already possesses great power, but that's not enough. From now on, we will continue to gather stars to construct it. It will only become stronger. Reneedle said, I'll do this together with you. Shroud's gaze turned gentle as he looked at her and said, Reneedle, give this spear a name. Reneedle pondered. This spear hasn't been fully forged yet. Once it's fully formed, we'll call it Abaddon. What do you think? Standing on one side, Guqin Shan couldn't help but tremble as she heard this. Shroud nodded. Very well. If I'm able to forge it one day, I'll give it another form. Why? Reneedle asked. It must be able to attack for me, as well as defend for you, Shroud replied. Hearing this, Guqin Shan couldn't help but take a step back and lean against the wall of the carriage. Abaddon, its other form, was the protector of all beings. It turns out that one of the 7 abyssal saint weapons, the 7-colored spear, was forged by Boss at this point in time. Everything around them suddenly became silent. The sound of the train stopped. It abruptly stopped in place, but didn't generate any inertia. Guqin Shan was able to see the underground wall through the window. Shroud, Reneedle, and Scarlet all maintained their original expressions and movements, completely frozen in place. Boss's voice resounded. Guqin Shan, at this point, there are a few things I should tell you. In the past, I was the most powerful entity within the reality gate, the greatest above the star crown, the great lord of infinite origins. I could see many future fates, and I knew that I would eventually become an exiled holy apostle, a fallen eternal abyss. That's why I used all of my power to leave behind many hidden cards in the long river of history. For example, these 6 sealing tokens, or the 7 abyssal saint weapons, or Dash's voice became solemn. Road's existence, Road's existence? Guqin Shan repeated. Indeed, there wasn't such a person in history, but I set up the 6 sealing tokens, afraid that wouldn't be enough. So I left a spot for a certain person from the future in the first half of my life's fate. I hoped that this person would grow up with me, help me see through the obscured history and face the truth hidden within the fog at the very last moment. I chose you. Thank you for your trust. But how did you do it? Guqin Shan asked. In truth, when I did it together. After all, the 3 coins are in your hands, and only you can use distortion, Boss replied. But how did you manage to insert someone into your past out of thin air? Gu Qingshan doubtfully asked. This is a type of fate power. I'm sure you've already guessed it, Boss replied. Gu Qingshan went silent for a split second, then muttered. So that's how it was. You used the fate ability. Existence. Very smart. As expected of you, Boss praised. Gu Qingshan sighed and replied, it was only after Lin was assimilated into the abyss that she obtained the power of the abyssal fate weaver and gained the fate ability. Existence indeed, in the age of immemorial, as the greatest above the star crown, I had this ability. I used it to set up a spot for someone from the future, Boss replied. With my distortion and your existence, I became a person who truly existed in the history of the age of immemorial. Gu Qingshan sighed, emotionally. As expected of the number 1 person in the past, he had already set up such an unimaginable backup during the age of immemorial. Do you still have the power of existence right now? Gu Qingshan asked. This was the power I left behind at my peak. Later on, I passed this power on to a certain person. You know her, Boss replied. I know. So, as the Eternal Abyss, after you granted Lin a new abyssal form, Lin's mission was to find a way to enter the Wraith Realm? Gu Qingshan asked. Indeed, Boss replied. Why did you suddenly appear now? To tell you that this was an important juncture. At this point in time, I created the first lost soul artifact, which was the embryonic form of the Spear of Abaddon, Boss replied. Gu Qingshan nodded and waited for him to continue. I am the Overlord of Radiance, and you were brought into history by me using the 6 seals, becoming the Overlord of Death. Gu Qingshan, as I grow stronger, you must consider what you should do and what your path of the law of death will be like, Gu Qingshan asked. Is this very important? Very important. Boss solemnly explained. Radiance and death complement each other, and you are the only one who can change history. How much you can do will determine what kind of renewal you will face in the future, as well as what kind of future the infinite worlds will be like. Make full use of the origin power of the age of immemorial and create your own path of the law of death. After saying so, Boss's voice completely disappeared. Everything around them slowly returned to normal. The train began to move again. The rock wall outside the window slowly receded. Shroud, Reneedle, and Scarlet once again began to talk. Gu Qingshan silently stood on one side. In history, a person who truly existed. Up until now, Gu Qingshan had thought that she was only entering history to witness a few things and search for a few truths. Who would have thought that her and Boss's combined power would be enough to change history? The causality within the flow of history would never change. But if the process was different, then the causality would only take shape and the path of fate would be greatly altered. This is the moment that will change everything. He silently muttered in his mind, then slowly sat down leaning against the wall and closed his eyes. How can I use the power of the stars to strengthen the law of death? Gu Qingshan slowly reached her hand out. A star silently manifested and hovered above her hand, giving off a faint blue glow. Chapter 1550. At the border of the wilderness, flames were constantly burning within a large crater. The extreme heat caused the air to distort and form invisible ripples. Broken parts were scattered all over the place. How troublesome! A figure climbed out from one of the craters and sat down on the ground, his chest heaving up and down like a bellows. Finally killed it. Another voice said. Reneedle had already run off to who knows where. Another voice said. 2 more figures climbed out from the crater and sat down next to the previous figure. The 3 deities. After over 3 hours, they had finally destroyed the metal mobile mech. The price was that they had used up all of their power and had no choice but to rest. Should we chase after it? Poison Deity asked. We definitely have to chase after it, but we're currently exhausted and need a rest for a bit. After all, these bodies belong to mortals, Foresight Deity replied. The other 2 deities nodded. Shadow Deity suddenly said, I've discovered something strange. What is it? Poison deity asked. Look, the shadow deity gently plucked a star from the void and held it in his hand. Foresight deity's expression changed and said, That can't be right. Why are all the laws other than radiance and death gathered in this star? Poison deity replied, Even during our era, such a bizarre thing had never happened. Foresight deity said, Indeed, the laws of the world have been changed. How unbelievable. Something beyond our understanding must have happened last night. The three deities exchanged glances and saw the seriousness in each other's eyes. Foresight deity pondered. If we can directly communicate with the laws, we won't be looking for Renedal for now. Then what should we do now? Shadow deity asked. Foresight deity smiled and replied, Originally, only Renedal could manifest a star and summon us from the dusty world. But now, we don't need to rely on her. You mean we need to find a few corpses and summon more companions? Foresight deity clenched his fist and continued. Once the myriad deities descend, we'll find Renedal, kill her, and find out what happened last night. The starlight in Gu Qingshan's hand illuminated their surroundings, drawing Shroud, Renedal, and Scarlet's attention. Road, you've also begun to manifest starlight. Shroud asked, Let's give it a try. Gu Qingshan smiled. Scarlet crouched in front of Gu Qingshan, clasped her hands together, and prayed. Road, you have to work hard. I'm your contractor. How strong you become in the future will directly determine how much of the law of death I can use. I'm counting on you. Gu Qingshan was speechless. I'm not a god. Why are you worshipping me like this? You and Shroud are currently equivalent to gods in the mortal realm, Renedal commented. Shroud chuckled. A mortal worshipping another mortal and obtaining power from him. Such a situation has indeed never occurred before in this world. All right, I'll give it a try and see what the law of death is suitable for, Gu Qingshan said. He looked at the speck of starlight in his hand and fell into thought. Scarlet, Shroud, and Renedal exchanged glances, silently closed the door, and went into another carriage. Since Road was contemplating his path of advancement, it was best not to disturb him. Gu Qingshan was the only one left in the carriage. He began to ponder Boss's words. Everything regarding radiance has already been decided. Only the law of death remains uncertain. Everything regarding radiance has already been decided. The inner plane was completely massacred by Renedal. Boss was also personally stabbed by her, then pushed into the eternal abyss. Renedal took control of the Wraith realm, continuously conquering other worlds, even using the soul swap technique to take control of the tomb of myriad beasts and stole the delimitation sword from the great tomb. And now, she's still searching for the other half of her body that Shroud sealed away. All of these were fated, unchangeable karma. Only the law of death remained. It wasn't certain. It might create a completely different situation out of nowhere. This was an unprecedented situation created by the combination of distortion and existence. With that in mind, Gu Qingshan couldn't help but mutter. Death was originally despair, but it can also bring hope. Fate has always been this ironic. He reached his hand forward and took out another star from the void of space. The two stars lightly hovered in his hand. Although their glow was faint, they actually contained unimaginable world origin power. This world origin power contained a few laws other than radiance and death. It was grand, vast, beautiful, and indescribable. Such power. If it was Shroud, he would have used them to create weapons, armor, or even a way to give mortals the power of law behemoths. Perhaps the abyssal creatures of the future were Shroud's means of turning mortals into laws. Weapon. Gu Qingshan remained silent for a long while, then suddenly reached his hand forward and drew a long staff from the void of space. The Devil King Warden Rod. Death Hope. Gu Qingshan muttered in a low voice. He abruptly put the two stars into the Devil King Warden Rod. The Devil King Warden Rod seemed to be coated in a layer of cold light, illuminating the entire carriage like a world of frost. Not enough power. Gu Qingshan took out another star from the void of space and lightly put it into the Devil King Warden Rod. As the Devil King Warden Rod absorbed this star, it became even brighter. At this point, Gu Shan was already feeling strained, so he casually took out a bottle of liquor, opened the lid, and poured it all down his throat. He drank it all at once, then reached his hand into the void of space and shouted, "Come out." He took out another star and put it into the Devil King Warden Rod. "4 stars now." Gu Shan wielded the scepter in his hand and quickly swung it in the void of space. Wherever the scepter passed, the light of the stars would connect and form lines. Shroud, Reneedle, and Scarlet heard the commotion and hurried over to check the situation, only to see Gu Shan drawing a pattern in the void of space. "This is," Shroud hesitantly asked, "an entity manifested from the laws of death?" Reneedle asked. Gu Shan sat down on the ground, breathing heavily from exhaustion, and replied, "That's right. This is the manifestation of the law of death. It will wield all of the power of death." Scarlet looked at the pattern of stars in the sky, only to see that it resembled some sort of wild beast. She asked in confusion, "But why is it so small?" "Because I only have this much power. After I recover, I'll slowly make it stronger," Gu Shan replied. "So that's why," Scarlet said. "What exactly is it?" Shroud asked with interest. "It will wield the power of death. I'm willing to call it the Wolf of Death," Gu Shan replied. The Wolf of Death. He was using death to manifest life. A life form obtained this way would surely wield the power of death. What a brilliant idea. Shroud used the stars to create a powerful soul artifact, while you used the stars to manifest a life form of death. "What the two of you are doing is not something a normal person could do," Reneedle praised. While they were talking, the pattern of the wild beast created by the radiance of stars slowly manifested on the ground. This wild beast had just been born, so it wasn't particularly large, only reaching up to Gu Shan's knees. But it wasn't that small. From its appearance, it looked like a newborn wolf cub, with a sharp head, a long face, a protruding nose, a fluffy and cute fur. This was a black life form of death. The four of them looked at the wild beast without any hint of contempt. Although it had just been born, although it didn't exude any of the majesty of a wolf, it was still a life form manifested by the law of death, destined to wield the power of death. No one could tell how strong it would become in the future. "It seems like it's the same as my destroyer of living beings soul artifact, still in its embryonic stage. It will need to continuously gather the power of stars to strengthen it," Shroud commented. "Indeed, I will train it so that it will slowly grasp the power of death." Saying so, Gu Shan waved her hand at the wild beast. "Come, Wolf of Death, I am your creator." The wild beast looked at Gu Shan with an intimate gaze. It moved. Its tail was the first to move. It was wagging its tail non-stop, running towards Gu Shan with its claws wide open, shouting, "Woof woof! Woof woof woof!" Under the four people's shocked gazes, this Wolf of Death leapt straight into Gu Shan's arms. Chapter 1551. Black Dog crouched at Gu Shan's feet and spoke in human language. "Master, please tell me what kind of existence I am and what kind of title one have." Title? Gu Shan was a bit confused. "I clearly drew a wolf. Why is it dog?" Seeing that he didn't react, Black Dog continued. "Master, please grant me a title." Gu Shan replied. "Ah, then you'll be Black Dog, Black Dog." Gu Shan explained. "You've only just been born. Where would you get a title from? Just be a good Black Dog for now. We'll talk about titles after you've made some contributions." Black Dog thought for a bit and realized that was the case, so he didn't worry too much about it. "What does it eat?" Scarlet asked with interest. "Dogs should be omnivores," Gu Shan said hesitantly. "Let's try it." Scarlet received a piece of bread from Shroud and gestured to the dog. Black Dog glanced at the bread in contempt and shook his head. "Then should we give it meat to eat?" Reneedle suggested. The bread in Scarlet's hand was replaced with meat. This time, Black Dog didn't even bother to look at it. The four young people exchanged glances, feeling a bit troubled. If a being manifested through laws doesn't eat, would it starve to death? Gu Shan lifted the dog up and asked, "What do you want to eat?" Black Hound replied, "The power of the stars will do." Gu Shan sighed. I used a lot of energy to manifest the star force earlier. I'll probably have to wait until I've rested enough before I feed you. Black Dog whimpered a few times, then said, I've only just been born. If I don't replenish my energy within 10 minutes, I'll starve to death. It was now that Gu Qingshan was a bit anxious and clenched her teeth. But I've already used up all my energy. Let me rest for a few minutes before I... Try again, Black Dog said. Actually, other than the power of the stars, there is something else that I can accept, Gu Qingshan quickly asked. What is it? Why, Black Dog said. Gu Qingshan glared at Black Dog. Black Dog avoided his gaze, turned his head to the side, and said, You have the smell of 3 kinds of alcohol on you. They are grape wine, wheat wine, and fruit wine. Any one of them could save my life, woof. Gu Qingshan took out a bottle of wine from her pocket. Black Dog's tail began to wag. Wait, what do you know? You can only drink the wine if you tell me everything. Gu Qingshan said. Black Dog said, My current power is still very weak, but if there is a death, I will be able to sense it. In addition, I can also make you choose a mortal to sleep. The second ability isn't bad at all, Renito commented. I feel like there's still a lot of room for growth. It might become even stronger in the future, Gu Qingshan said. Can you make a group of people fall asleep in the future? Scarlet doubtfully asked. No, falling asleep is the most obvious way to die. It might turn into a more profound ability in the future, Shroud replied. From a certain point of view, it has a deeper understanding of the power of the laws than I do, Gu Qingshan sighed, emotionally. He opened the bottle of wine and gave it to Black Dog. Black Dog held the bottle with both paws, raised his head, and gulped down the entire bottle of wine in one gulp. Whoa! From now on, there's another guy who can steal my wine from me, Scarlet exclaimed in surprise, seemingly eager to try it out. Gu Qingshan noticed her reaction and said, Now that I've manifested the life of death, that means you can also do the same, Scarlet excitedly said. Then I'll have to think about what kind of beast to manifest, she fell into thought. At this point, Black Dog had already put the bottle of wine down. His body grew a bit larger, opened his mouth, and lightly inhaled towards the void of space. 2 dim stars appeared from the void of space, then were sucked into Black Dog's mouth. Receiving the power of these 2 stars, Black Dog's body grew a bit larger. Strands of black flames silently manifested around his body. You can absorb stars by yourself? Gu Qingshan asked. Just like Master, it takes a lot of effort. Black Dog lay flat on the ground again, breathing heavily. He suddenly perked up his ears, apparently sensing something. Master, I can sense that death is constantly occurring at the destination of this train. A large number of living beings have already been reduced to ash, Black Dog solemnly said. Gu Qingshan's expression changed. Are you sure? He asked. I'm very sure as we speak. Those living beings have already died, Black Dog replied. Everyone exchanged glances. What could possibly happen at the scavenger yard? Could it be that the pixies picked up something incredible? Shroud doubtfully asked. Gu Qingshan questioned further. Not a single one of them is still alive. Black Dog replied. None, Gu Qingshan understood. If the people of the Pantheon were waiting at the destination, at least they would still be alive, and not all of them would have died. Since everyone was already dead, what happened at the destination must have nothing to do with them. That place was the ruins of the Pantheon. The pixies had also stayed there for countless years, so there shouldn't be any more danger. The pixies were currently using that place to sort out the things that fell from the sky. Things that fell from the sky. Actually, other than the artifacts of the samsara, there should also be the apocalypse. The apocalypse that went through the reality gate with the samsara and entered this world. Gu Qingshan abruptly stood up and loudly asked, How much longer until we reach the scavenger yard? Renito replied, According to the map, there's still about 70 miles left. Let's jump off the train, Gu Qingshan resolutely declared. He flipped open the window and jumped out. The others also jumped out and landed in the deep tunnel. Rumble, rumble, rumble. As the train went further and further away, the noise became weaker and weaker until it couldn't be heard anymore. The 4 of them stood in the darkness and silently waited for a while. Nothing out of the ordinary happened. It was now that they calmed down a bit. What do we do now? Scarlet asked. This tunnel should be safe, There are many forks in the road, so we need to find a different path. Gu Qingshan looked around and said, "A dark tunnel, a cart train that connects various places underground." A flash of light appeared in Gu Qingshan's mind. When I first entered the Wraith Realm, it was also a tunnel like this. Even the Wraith Realm, the Angelic Realm, as well as a few other apocalypses and worlds were inside this tunnel. The giant corpse's words faintly resounded in her ears. The Lord of Infinite Origins once noticed something. He forged 6 sealing tokens within the ruins of the Pantheon. Indeed, during the Age of Immemorial, there weren't that many worlds inside the Reality Gate. There was only a single world. During the previous era, this place was home to the myriad deities. But now that the myriad deities have gone into hiding in the dusty world, this place has been abandoned. That's why the 4 gods of earth, water, fire, and wind established a base here to search for the ruins of the Pantheon. That's why when I first entered the Wraith Realm, as well as when I was fleeing through the dark tunnel, I would often see abandoned train stations. These are the cart trains that the pixies built within the ruins of the Pantheon during the Age of Immemorial. "What's the matter?" Shroud noticed Gu Qingshan's expression and asked. "I'm thinking, could it be that we're already inside the ruins of the Pantheon?" Gu Qingshan said with an uncertain expression. "What's the reason?" Renedal asked. Gu Qingshan walked to the edge of the tunnel and lightly touched the wall with her hand. "Shroud, we need a bit of light," Gu Qingshan said. Shroud reached his hand out. The warm light dispelled the darkness and illuminated their surroundings. Everyone couldn't help but look up. "How tall?" Shroud commented. "That's right, this tunnel is truly magnificent," Scarlet also exclaimed. The entire tunnel was several hundred stories tall. So, as the 4 of them stood at a corner of the tunnel, they looked like ants standing in front of a tall building. The walls were engraved with intricate and beautiful patterns, as well as some unknown murals. Most of the murals had been destroyed, but there were still a few intact murals that displayed various unheard-of scenes. None of the scenes had anything to do with the pixies. The entire tunnel extended in all directions, with countless forks in the road, as well as various doors on the walls. However, the majority of these doors and passages have been marked by the pixies with various warning signs. Danger. Extreme danger. Absolutely do not enter. Even the pixies will die if they enter this fork in the road. Absolutely do not enter. A cool, gloomy wind blew through the tunnel. Occasionally, they could hear some faint, strange noises. Scarlet couldn't help but exclaim, "My God, Road was right. This is a ruin from the age of myriad deities." Chapter 1552. I don't know anything about the age of myriad deities. Do any of you know anything about it? Gu Qingshan asked. Before, he was still a bit doubtful about his identity as Road, afraid that his companions would notice something, but now that he knew that this identity came from the fate ability, existence, he was reassured. "Road, don't you pay attention in history class?" Scarlet chuckled. The elders said that the age of myriad deities was a matter from the previous era. It was said that the era of myriad deities was too dangerous. There were no living beings, because living beings couldn't possibly survive in that kind of world. Only deities could, Shroud replied. Renedal continued. The deities won against the great evil and danger, creating the Pantheon. Then, one day, all of them abruptly disappeared, and that era also came to an end. Gu Qingshan doubtfully asked, "Why did they disappear?" "I don't know. No one knows. It's always been a mystery," Scarlet shrugged. Shroud sighed. "There was a period of time when I was fascinated by the age of myriad deities, but the elders and the pixies all said that the matters of the previous era were too dangerous, so I wasn't allowed to investigate." He opened his palm and lightly tossed the cluster of light hovering in his hand. The warm and gentle cluster of light slowly floated up and hovered in the middle of the dark tunnel. The cluster of light gave off a brighter and more gentle white light, completely illuminating the entire tunnel that the young people were in. The tunnel extended in all directions. The walls on both sides were also filled with stone doors of various sizes, leading to an unknown destination. Shroud was a bit eager and said, "We can't just stay here forever. How about we find a door and see what's inside? Reneedle nodded. Indeed, we can't go to the scavenger station, nor can we go back, but we might be able to find a new path if we enter the ruins, Scarlet asked. Then should we choose a door? Shroud excitedly replied. All right, then let's. Gu Qing suddenly cut him off and said, No, don't be in such a hurry. What is it? Shroud was confused. We don't know anything about the Pantheon. Is it really all right to just go in like this? Gu Qing cautiously asked. The three of them looked at him. But there's no other path, Shroud replied. At the very least, we need to have a basic understanding of the Pantheon Temple before deciding what to do. I think it's safer this way, Gu Qing said. Do you have a basic understanding of the Pantheon? Scarlet asked. She walked up to Gu Qing, tiptoed, and touched his forehead with her hand. What? Gu Qing asked. Scarlet pulled her hand back and said, I don't have a fever. Road, don't you know that the Pantheon is an extremely mysterious ruin from the previous era? If we don't go in, how would we understand its secrets? Gu Qing pointed at the wall and said, The mural. The three of them looked in the direction of his hand. There were indeed some murals on the wall that he had never seen before, but most of them were damaged. Only a few scattered places could barely be seen. Everyone carefully looked at the murals and found that the parts that were still relatively intact were the images of some deities. The deities were wielding various weapons or in various poses, as if they were fighting against something. But the murals were too damaged, so they couldn't see who the enemy of the deities were. After a while, everyone couldn't help but feel a bit dejected. Too many of these murals have been damaged, so we probably won't be able to see anything. Shroud didn't mind. Gu Qing, on the other hand, stared closely at the murals and blankly said, Actually, I'm thinking, what exactly destroyed these murals? The three of them remained silent. Road, what are you trying to say? Reneedle asked. Gu Qing pointed for them to see, then explained, Many murals portraying the heroism of the deities are here. Even the brilliance of some spells and weapons are clearly visible. We can interpret this as the deities declaring their victory, Reneedle thought briefly, then nodded. That is indeed the case, Gu Qing continued. But take a look, the enemies of the deities can't be seen in any of the murals on this wall. The relevant murals have all been purposefully erased. Shroud, Reneedle, and Scarlet regained their focus and carefully observed the murals. That really is the case, Shroud muttered. But then who did this? Why would they erase the enemies of the deities? Scarlet couldn't help but ask. Reneedle calmly replied, Perhaps it's just a coincidence. After all, we've only seen this part of the tunnel's murals. The entire tunnel is actually very long and bottomless. Perhaps other places will show us who the enemies of the deities are, Gu Qing resolutely said. Then let's find a fork in the road and continue walking. This will help us confirm a few things. Shroud took a deep breath and said, All right, let's go. I also want to know what kind of entity the enemies of the deities are if we're going to take a fork. Then let's take this one. Reneedle pointed at a fork in the tunnel on the other side and said. Everyone turned to look, only to see that the fork in the tunnel was lined with railroad tracks that extended deep into the tunnel. That was the Pixies' hex train. Since this was a place that allowed trains to pass through, the Pixies must have already explored it. Compared to the other dark and desolate tunnels, this path should be safer. Gu Qing lightly nodded and said, Then we'll take this path. The four of them went through the tunnel and entered the fork in the tunnel. The cluster of light that Shroud had released had been following them, illuminating the various murals on the walls. Look, this deity is controlling flames, but they're pure red flames, Scarlet commented. It's probably a deity that wields the law of fire, Reneedle commented. Look over there, that deity is holding a battle axe in his hand. There are also countless overlapping images on top of the axe. I really wonder what law he wields, Shroud excitedly commented. Gu Qing didn't say anything and simply observed the murals. All sorts of deities displayed their unparalleled supernatural powers to fight against some sort of evil. But the evil entity was still erased from the murals, so there was no way to tell who the enemy of the deities was. Reneedle muttered, How strange. It really is as Rhodes said. None of the murals can tell who the enemy of the deities is. The youths looked at each other, and a strange feeling arose in their hearts. "Look!" Scarlet suddenly called out. She pointed at one of the murals. Gu Qingshan immediately turned towards the direction she was pointing. It was a complete mural. Among the many murals, this was the only one that wasn't damaged at all. The deities were standing in a luxurious palace, celebrating their victory. This is the scene of a victory celebration. I still can't tell who the enemy of the deities is. Shroud shook his head and sighed. Gu Qingshan looked at the mural and focused on it. These deities are quite interesting. Even if they're celebrating their victory, they're still quite far away from each other. Why is that? He muttered. Hearing him say that, everyone carefully looked at the deities, only to see that although their expressions had changed, they were still quite far away from each other. Renedal pondered. They seem to be wary of something. Wary of each other, Shroud replied. Gu Qingshan's expression changed as she was attracted by several figures. At the top corner of the entire mural stood 3 young girls. The other deities were all staying far away from where they were, not daring to approach them at all. Only a single deity was greeting them from afar. It seems even the deities are afraid of them. Who are they? Gu Qingshan muttered. The human settlement. The corpses of a man and a woman were laid on the ground. They had managed to avoid various disasters and survived until 2 minutes ago. Then they ran into the 3 deities. How difficult. It's so hard to find a single living person. Poison deity sighed. Foresight deity pondered. I remember that there should have been a lot of living beings, but this time the law behemoths have all died, and most of the living beings have also died. The food chain has been completely broken. It seems this era will collapse sooner or later. Shadow deity also sighed. Indeed, it'll only become harder and harder to find living beings from now on. Most deities might not even have a body to return to the realm of life. Foresight deity retracted his thoughts, grabbed the void of space, and caught a cluster of stars. The stars illuminated their surroundings. There were at least 30 of these stars, several times more than what Shroud and Road had collected. Very well, we can now send our 2 companions to the realm of life. The male body will naturally be given to Mystery Deity. After all, his ability to gather information is the strongest. As for the female body, Foresight Deity paused, then turned to Poison Deity and Shadow Deity. The 2 deities seemed to have realized something, so they couldn't help but take a step back and looked away. Foresight Deity sighed, then forced himself to ask, "Are we really going to let her come up?" Poison Deity muttered, "They've already decided on her. How could we not let her come up?" Foresight Deity abruptly raised his voice and said, "That's because if we let her come up, they won't have to face her." Poison Deity said nothing. Shadow Deity looked at Foresight Deity and asked in return, "Are you going to stop her from coming to the realm of life?" Foresight Deity was stunned and didn't say anything for a long while. Shadow Deity said, "Fine, let's go with everyone's decision and let her come up. After all, we can't afford to offend her." Poison Deity then spoke up. "After all, her older sister is dead. Her younger sister has lost her memories and doesn't even recognize us now. I'm sure she's going crazy from joy." Shadow Deity continued. "Furthermore, it's best that we get her here first. Otherwise, if she gets angry, neither you nor I will be able to handle it." Foresight Deity looked at the starlight in his hand and sighed. With a wave of his hand, the starlight flew towards the female corpse. Seeing that, Poison Deity and Shadow Deity both took a few steps back. Foresight Deity spoke in a hoarse voice. "The craziest of the 3 sisters of fate. I never thought that I would one day have to act together with her." Chapter 1553. The starlight circled around and entered the female corpse on the ground. The female corpse moved a bit. Foresight Deity, Poison Deity, and Shadow Deity spoke in unison. "Deity of fate, Lachesis, we respectfully welcome you to the mortal realm." The female corpse closed her eyes and giggled. She spoke with an extremely weak voice. "This little bit of star power isn't enough to allow me to completely descend. I need more power." Poison deity and shadow deity exchanged glances, then acted at the same time to capture two clusters of starlight from the void of space and sent them into the female corpse's forehead. Ah, what pitiful and insignificant power! But it's barely enough for me to descend. The female corpse opened her eyes and sat up. Her figure began to change, becoming more slender, more voluptuous. Her facial features became more beautiful. Her green hair also turned completely black. "Tell me the latest situation," the woman coldly said. The deity of fate then told her everything that had happened recently. Space had been sealed, flight was impossible. The food chain had been severed, the number of living beings was decreasing. Most importantly, you're saying that my little sister doesn't recognize you at all? The woman asked. That's right. She seems to have forgotten everything. We also forgot what happened last night, but she seems to have forgotten even more. She even forgot about the pantheon, the deity of fate replied. Venerable Lachesis, what should we do now? Poison deity asked. The woman didn't answer. Instead, lightly reached her hand out and pressed it into the void of space. She chanted, by the law of fate, in the name of myself and my little sister, please divide my big sister Clotho's power between us. The void of space remained silent. Nothing happened. Lachesis waited for a while, then abruptly laughed. Ahahaha. Atropos didn't cooperate with my fate technique, so she really did forget everything. She laughed so hard that her body trembled, then raised her slender and pale hand to look at Foresight deity. Foresight deity hurriedly came forward and lightly helped her up. Your Excellency, what's going on? Foresight deity respectfully asked. Clotho is dead. Her power has returned to mysticism. If my little sister and I both called out to her, we would be able to divide her power equally. But my little sister didn't respond, Lachesis replied. So, she really lost her memories? Poison God asked. That's right. Lachesis was in a good mood. So, she decided to say a few more words. After I kill this pitiful guy, the power of us three sisters will all belong to me. Then her memories, naturally, I would know about it. Lachesis replied. The god of prophecy heaved a sigh of relief. No matter what, it was fine as long as it didn't affect this matter. He once again took out a handful of stars from the void and gently sprinkled them on the male corpse. The man opened his eyes and stood up. He immediately saw Lachesis and bowed. Lady Lachesis, your servant, riddle deity, is at your service. Please instruct me, Lachesis pondered. Right now, it's very difficult to even find a single living person, so there's no need for us to ask for more companions to descend. We need to find my little sister directly, kill her, and find out what exactly happened. Understood? I need to fly to the sky to see where she is, mystery deity said. Foresight deity hurriedly said, Wait a minute. The sky has been sealed. The space has also been sealed. There is currently no way to fly. Can't we destroy it? Mystery deity asked. This is a spatial seal that all the law behemoths had set up at the same time. It would be very difficult to destroy and would exhaust all of our power, Lachesis scowled and said. The law behemoths have all died, but they still left behind such a sealing technique. How annoying. After saying this, she was suddenly startled. She muttered to herself, That's not right. What's not right? Foresight deity asked. Lachesis replied. The law behemoths are the manifestation of the world's spirit and origin. So the actions of a single law behemoth cannot represent the world. But if all the law behemoths work together to perform this spatial seal technique, it would basically represent the will of the world itself. Could it be related to what happened last night? Foresight deity asked. Riddle deity, what do you think? Lachesis asked. Mystery deity looked towards the sky and replied, I can sense that there's something outside the sky, but this technique had completely sealed everything, including my power, making it impossible for me to see what's outside. Everyone fell silent. Who would have thought that Lachesis would notice something amiss as soon as she arrived? There should be something outside the sky. Riddle deity had also proven this. Lachesis slowly paced around, thought for a while, then said, It seems we need to investigate it a bit, and it would be best if we can break it. Then let's begin, Foresight deity said. The 5 deities spread out and formed a circle. From the void of space, Boundless star power surged towards them and enveloped them. As time passed, the starlight grew brighter and brighter, gradually forming a visible tidal wave that flowed back and forth in the sky. This was the power of star power that was the accumulation of numerous laws. Foresight deity, this power is quite considerable. If we throw it out, will it be enough to break that technique? Lachesis loudly asked. Not enough. That sealing technique is the accumulation of the power of all the law behemoths. Foresight deity loudly replied. Lachesis appeared impatient and shouted, "Come!" The surging star origin power descended from the sky and gathered in the middle of the 5 deities, manifesting as a transparent deep blue sphere. This sphere flew in Lachesis' hand. She held the sphere tightly and shouted, "Fate weaves the beginning and the end of all things." Darkness manifested behind her, manifesting as thin black threads that slowly weaved into a featureless dark humanoid face that opened its giant mouth. Lachesis placed the sphere of star origin power into the dark humanoid face's giant mouth. The dark humanoid face chewed on the star origin power and uttered a deep and profound voice. Lachesis chanted, "By the name of Lachesis, summon the blade of fate's end. Slash apart this all-imprisoning sky for me." The dark humanoid face stopped chewing, turned to Lachesis, and uttered a single word. Yes, instantly, the dark humanoid face disappeared without a trace, replaced by a black wooden hilt in Lachesis' hand. There was nothing above the hilt, no blade at all. Lachesis wielded the bare hilt and swung it towards the sky. This was a bit laughable, but the other 4 deities didn't seem like they wanted to laugh at all. Instead, they appeared a bit fearful. After the saber was swung, the black wooden hilt disappeared. Lachesis lightly sighed with a pale expression and said, "It's done." The 4 deities all looked up at the sky, only to see a series of black cracks appearing in the sky. A series of cracking sounds rang out in the depths of the sky, as if something had broken. All of a sudden, the deities all sensed something. Shadow deity lightly leapt into the sky. "The spatial imprisonment technique has been broken," he told Lachesis. Lachesis' expression didn't change and ordered, "Mystery deity, take a look at what's in outer space, then find my little sister's whereabouts." No answer. Lachesis turned around, only to see mystery deity blankly staring at the sky with an expression of deep fear. Lachesis swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. "What's the matter?" she cautiously asked. Mystery deity's body trembled a bit and instinctively said, "Run. Hurry and run." He abruptly regained his senses and shouted, "Lachesis, we need to find a place to hide." At the same time, the ruins of the Pantheon. Within the dark tunnel, Gu Qingshan's group observed the murals as they walked, seeing various deities, but they still couldn't see who the enemy of the deities was. Suddenly, everyone's expressions changed. "Huh, the spatial imprisonment seems to have been broken," Shroud said. Reneedle lightly leapt up and hovered in the air. Scarlet also leapt up and happily exclaimed, "I can finally fly again." Gu Qingshan pondered briefly before tossing a cluster of black flames forward. The flames turned into a black dog that crouched down in front of him. "What? Is it time to drink already?" Black Dog wagged its tail at him. "No, Black Dog, I want to ask you to do something," Gu Qingshan said. "Tell me, there are a few especially small holes on the ceiling of the tunnel, most likely used for ventilation, that could be connected to the ground. Turn into black flames and fly out to see what's happening outside." "That's simple," Black Dog nodded. He leapt up, turned into a cluster of black flames, and flew up towards the top of the tunnel. Halfway through his flight, the black flames seemed to have been frightened by something and hurriedly landed, turning back into Black Dog in front of Gu Qingshan. Oh. Black Dog let out a low growl as all of its fur stood on end. Gu Qingshan tensed up and hurriedly asked, "What is it? What happened?" Black Dog stared at the top of the tunnel with a fearful gaze. Gu Qingshan took out a bottle of liquor, opened the lid, and gave it to him. Black Dog drank the entire bottle in one gulp, then felt a bit better. "What exactly happened?" Gu Qing Shan softly asked. Black Dog breathed out a mouthful of flames and whispered, Road, you need to mentally prepare yourself. Tell me, Gu Qing Shan said. Black Dog looked at him and slowly said, All living beings on the surface are dead. Bookseller's House website. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.